Hey guys, welcome to the video. I'm Villain Fury, and did you know this month is Marvel Champion's 6th birthday, and this year is the year that its hero roster grew to over 60 heroes, both of which are crazy achievements that we're here today to celebrate. But I also want to celebrate a personal milestone. This is my 150th video on the channel, and to celebrate this, I have made a 150-page mega document detailing every hero's strengths, weaknesses, best archetypes, best cards, best pairings for multiplayer, all sorts of stuff, every hero, and I'm talking it through all in this video. It's taken a colossal amount of effort and time, like an obscene amount of hours, I dread to think, but I wanted to try and share as much as I reasonably could of what I've learned throughout my years of playing, deck building, and analyzing my favorite game, Marvel Champions. 60 heroes, over 100 definable archetypes, and just hundreds and hundreds of cards. Unless you've been playing in a really dedicated way for years, it's just impossible to keep up with all this stuff. And even then, it's very, very difficult. I've used my own document here in my, recent games the last couple months to kind of like remind me what character should be bringing what. It's actually been helpful for me to use my own document. So I think you guys are going to find this video and the document extraordinarily helpful. Now, I don't normally shout this thing out, but since a couple of people have asked in my recent videos, I have opened a Ko-Fi page. So if you want to donate, say the price of a coffee, if you think this video is kind of worth your time, if you think my content is kind of worth it, you can totally go and make an account there and do that. And I've still got my Patreon, which I've shouted out once across 2 years, or you can donate through YouTube, but there's no pressure to do any of that. If you are here enjoying the video, that's good enough for me. And this is probably a good time to mention that if you want to support my channel in a different way, this video's sponsor is Into the AM. They've been partnered with my channel for a long time, and I really appreciate them, and I really appreciate their clothes. They do awesome graphic tees, vintage tees, shirts, jackets, some really cool men's clothing. And I have a discount link down below, which if you use it, you get money off, but I also get a little bit of money from Into the AM, which is how it helps support me. And there is no better time than now if you're interested, because they have huge sales on all across November. There's Cyber Monday stuff as well, Black Friday. Now is really the perfect time. There's so many cool things. I have no complaints. It's all lasted. The stuff I got, basically 2 years ago now is still perfect today, and I have worn some of it quite a lot. So again, a huge thank you to Into the AM for supporting my channel, and a huge thank you to all of you guys for watching. We just had my 4,000 subscriber special video, and now we have this one. It's the second part of what I'm calling my November finale. This is the biggest part, but I think my next video is better for having this one out. Now we can get back into the video proper. Now, rather than watch the video, you can just go down to the document. The link is in the description. There's a printable version and a mobile version, which I made because, the original version crashed on my phone a couple times. And you can just use it. The only thing I'd say before you click away, maybe throw a like on the channel, maybe share the video with a friend or share the document with someone. So this is what the document looks like. Don't worry about the sea of text. If you see something on the screen that helps you, great, but I'm going to talk through everything you need. The main thing is, if you are reading off the screen or using the document directly, the main thing is that after some cards, there'll be numbers in brackets, such as, square bracket, 3-4, close bracket. The 3-4 simply means I recommend that card at a player count of 3 to 4 players. If it's got 1 in square brackets, that means I recommend it for solo. That'll probably make more sense as we go through the video. Other than that, I just want to point out that this video and document is only a starting point. There's no kind of replacement for experience and experimenting. There are many more possibilities for every character in the game than what I list here. These ones are just, a really good guideline, and I think this video will serve as kind of a shortcut to a lot of knowledge, but there's always more to discover, even for me. Also, as we go through the video, everything I'm recommending from the cards, the archetypes, the kind of hero pairings, they are not based on power, but mutual gain. So I'd rather, rather than 2 10 out of 10 super powerful characters, rather than pair every hero with Doctor Strange and Spider-Ham, I've actually tried to make sure these heroes synergize and lift each other up. So that's really what I'm rating the quote-unquote best on. However, there is a caveat that powerful things, powerful characters, and powerful cards and things will be included more commonly than weaker options, just because the more powerful something is, kind of the more things it can typically do, the more hooks it has to synergize, and more characters it works well on. It's not a straight one-to-one kind of deal, but definitely a character that can cover multiple weaknesses is more likely to be recommended for a character who has multiple weaknesses, and weaker characters do not cover multiple weaknesses, and so on and so forth. But I have tried to put a good mixture of heroes throughout here. I've put a good mixture of different archetypes, a good mixture of different cards, but it felt disingenuous to not include some powerful options when they were genuinely really good at synergizing, but at the same time, I'm not focusing on that, and you'll see a big variety here. A very boring note is that for solo play, some of the archetypes I recommend for some of the characters, you might just want to take a few extra allies for threat removal, particularly like aggression, protection, pull. Some of these older heroes have very low threat removal, and yeah, just in solo play, you might need to top it up, and that is why you'll see swarm decks quite often recommended for solo play for the low 14 characters. But you don't have to do these. These is just kind of like a guideline, a helpful starting point, if you will. And there's a little bonus just before we get into talking about the heroes proper. There are 14 pages of bonus material at the end of the document. You can actually navigate the document if you go to it through the tabs here. Like, you can just click onto any character and boom, there's stuff for all of them. Archetypes, different player counts, by the way, everything you could possibly need. All the cards done per aspect. And again, this is where you see the square brackets, like Hall of Heroes, you can totally use this solo, but I typically tend to recommend it in multiplayer because you'll get more minions, you'll get more payoff more quicker and more payoff throughout the game because there's just more targets for it to defeat and so on. And if we switch to the mobile view now, just because this version is actually better organized, you can use it on desktop, you can do whatever, but this PC kind of friendly version is printer friendly. What we can see here is I've organized this a little differently. I've got tabs per character, you can click into it, and when it loads, because it's a big document I've just switched into, you can click into it and you can go to any character here. But right at the bottom, the bonus parts I have all the heroes listed by traits. So if you wanted to pair up some Avengers and you can't remember all of the 25 Avengers in the game, you can go here and see them all at a glance, as well as some honorable thematic mentions that maybe you want to kind of expand things. These are characters that have worked with the Avengers or actually been in the Avengers or kind of associated with the Avengers in the comics or maybe the MCU that I think could be kind of interesting extra options if you want more. I've got this for the Avengers, Guardians, S.H.I.E.L.D., every single one right down to the X-Force, and even this little bonus grid at the bottom for Genius heroes, aerial ones. If you don't want to double up on Mystic heroes, you can see all the Mystic characters here. Or maybe you want to run a 4-player game with all the Mystics, which is also a super awesome kind of fun idea. So this is really to help you pair stuff for multiplayer or two-handed play, but you're going to see a lot of best pairings within all these characters as well. I'm going to go back to the main document for the majority of this video, and I'm going to put the heroes on the screen and so on. But just to start with, before we go alphabetically through all the heroes, I want to skip to Spider-Man Peter Parker, because he is a much better example than the first character alphabetically out of every hero, because that's Adam Warlock, and he's just really, 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 really weird. So let's go to Spider-Man Peter Parker. Boom. And we're going to kind of talk through it. So there's too much to talk about every single thing for all of these characters throughout the whole video. There's so much stuff. So I'm going to talk about the key strengths and weaknesses, my favorite of all the archetypes I'm suggesting, some interesting cards which, some of them are going to be obvious and I might talk about those a bit less, the ones that are more well known. And I'm going to talk about cards that you might not think are really good on these characters and talk to you about why I think they are, because I think that's more interesting than saying, hey, this kind of genius specific card is good for a genius, or Professor X is good for X-Men. I mean, he's good for everyone, but you get what I'm saying. So here we are at Spider-Man Peter Parker. I call him a tanky, resource-rich hero, and yeah, I think his strengths are his economy, particularly his hero form card draw from his spider sense ability, but he is just pretty rich in general. He's got ultra ability to generate money, his web shooters are pretty nice, and he's also incredibly good at defense. He's got 3 defense, 2 copies of backflip, which is a great defense card, and perhaps one of the strongest ultra ego supports in the game, Aunt May, for healing is really, really good. So he's very difficult for a villain to defeat, and he has the money to play more cards than most characters. However, his weaknesses are that he is one of the worst removers of threat in the entire game somehow, and he has very inefficient damage for minions. He's either dealing 1 damage, or 2 damage, or 8 damage. If a minion has, 4, 5, 6 health, it's kind of awkward for him. So for threat removal and for damage at kind of a medium level, he's often looking for a different hero to help out with that in multiplayer, or in solo play, he's looking to deck build specifically to counteract those problems. I actually have videos on how to understand the aspects, how to pair heroes with aspects, and how to pair different heroes together, which could all be helpful, so I highly recommend those. But in general, if you're in solo play, low threat removal, Justice is going to shine. If you're a multiplayer, give Spider-Man something to kind of enhance his strengths, make use of the economy or his defense, and maybe somebody else can cover threat removal, but he can totally do that too. The beauty of card draw and having a strong economy in Marvel Champions is you can kind of pay to solve any weakness you might have, and you're going to see that throughout the look at Spider-Man here. So the suggested archetypes I've got for him In like solo aggression and protection, I'm recommending very little. You can totally play him in those and do well, particularly with more archetypes than I've listed here, more styles of deck. But these are the ones I'm like highly recommending. I really like Spider-Man with Boot Camp, which is a support that boosts the damage of your allies. However, in solo play, I don't want to spend like a good chunk of my turn setting that up for like long-term damage, and I just watch myself lose to threat, if that makes sense. But you can totally do it. I've done it. It works fine. But I'm going for like simpler, quicker tempo things for aggression. And yeah, you're probably going to want to take a few allies that can remove threat for proper consistency. Interestingly, across all the aspects, I think Justice might have the least synergy with Spider-Man Peter Parker. But it covers his weakness of threat removal, which is his biggest weakness by far, the best. Justice does have a lot of nice mental resource cards, which Black Cat can draw, and Spider-Man's really good at paying for any mental resource requirements, which is why I like him with Hone Technique, like at 2 and 3 and 4 player. I actually really like Spider-Man with Hone Technique decks. I generally like him the best with leadership, particularly anything that is to do with like upgrading allies, because he has the money to pay for good allies that want to be upgraded, and his defense is so good that he doesn't typically need to block with allies, and Black Cat doesn't take consequential damage, so it's also really good for upgrades being played on her. So he's really good at those. And of course, protection suits him pretty well. There's a lot he can do there. And I actually really like Web Warrior decks on Spider-Man. He does have to play Warrior of the Great Web first to be able to really benefit from them the most, or like the most conveniently. But Web Warrior allies are so good. I think it's kind of worth the initial hurdle, and it's super thematic, and the cards are super fun. So, theme, fun, and mechanically interesting. It ticks all the boxes, so I highly recommend that, and it can do really, really well. The only thing is, if you put all Web Warrior allies into your deck, you might not be able to play all of them initially. You can maybe have a few cards that you can't play, so I might take like 3 to 4 non-Web Warrior allies, and then a bunch of Web Warrior allies, but the Web Warrior allies will be the focus of the deck. This has recently actually got better with the new Web Warrior allies from Silk. There's a lot more Web Warrior allies that you can play before you have the Web Warrior trait on the board, and they provide that Web Warrior trait for the other cards. Something I should point out is that I have some archetypes named after a card, and then you'll go down to the card section, which we're about to get to, and you'll see, like Taunt is an archetype I've put for Spider-Man Peter Parker, but I've also recommended it as a card. I've got Hone Technique, which is the name of a card, as an archetype, but I don't have it under his aggression recommendations. And why is that? Well, Hone Technique is a card that if you include it, you kind of have to build around it, and it will be the dominant kind of purpose of your deck. So when I'm looking for a general Spider-Man deck, I'm not looking to include Hone Technique, but if I'm going for a Hone Technique build, I might look at what other cards might kind of work with that, if that makes sense. Whereas Taunt is a card that, if you include it, you can really shape your deck around the expectation you're going to use Taunt and benefit from it. However, I could just build a completely different deck, and if I've got, a couple of deck spaces left at the end, I might fill them up with a couple of copies of Taunt. It won't be the main focus, but it's still a good card for him that I could kind of include in a different deck, whereas Hone Technique is something I always want to focus on. Hopefully that makes sense. To talk about some of the notable cards for Peter Parker Spider-Man, we've got obvious stuff for like genius traits like Moon Girl and Ingenuity. For the medium kind of minion damage, I actually really love Clobber in Aggression. I think that's just so convenient. He's got wild resources as well, those web shooters, so I like Sunfire, I like 3 steps ahead in Justice, things like that. I really love Jocasta in Protection to hold backflip. I think that's really good. So there's a lot of fun stuff going on here, a lot of possibilities. That healing from Aunt May in Ultra Ego, actually so good for Paul, especially Spider-Man's just high defense as well, keeping him healthy. It means these triple resources, or potentially double resources, just going to be giving him so much money on top of his money. Resource cards and card draw go together so incredibly well. And Paul can provide the resources, and Spider-Man provides the card draw. So there's a lot of really fun synergy on Peter Parker. For multiplayer, my recommended pairings, and I will say these are all focused on 2-player, because that's mainly what I play, but also, according to our recent poll, by far what you guys play as well, compared to 3 or 4-player. So if you're looking to try 2-handed, I hope this helps solo players as well, but all of these pairings also work really well in 3 and 4-player, and if something does change, I will generally have it in the other considerations kind of column here, because it is kind of accounted for. But yeah, the focus I'm mainly going to be talking about 2-player as if it's in 2-player, but all of these things typically scale well. My favorite pairing for Spider-Man is Cyclops, because if you have Spider-Man play Spider Tracer on a minion, that's an upgrade. Now it's a valid target for Cyclops' Optic Blast ability. And you know what Optic Blast is? It's great minion damage, which is something Spider-Man lacks. So Spider-Man helps Cyclops do something that covers Spider-Man's own weakness. It's really nice. Cyclops is also a really strong threat remover, which helps Spider-Man out a lot. And Cyclops can really enjoy extra defense, which Spider-Man is quite often able to provide. I also want to shout out a very simple one in Gamora. Gamora has great threat removal and great damage from the beginning of the game, but she can't so easily put together these big game-ending combos where Spider-Man can swinging web kick, and get a lot of work done there, and he really appreciates that kind of precise minion damage she can provide, as well as just, threat removal in general is really good. And Gamora, like Cyclops, doesn't have the highest natural survivability, but Spider-Man does, and he can often defend one of them, take a hit, go and heal with Aunt May, or defend one of them, then backflip his own attack, and so on and so forth. That basically concludes my little look at Spider-Man here. I'm probably not going to spend this long on all the characters, just because there's so many to get through. I think this video could easily be like 10 hours if I let it. Probably more. I could probably do an hour per character if I really wanted. So I'm going to be pretty ruthless with what I mention and try and focus on the most interesting stuff. We're going to swap back to the other version of my document now, the kind of mega document where it's all 150 pages together. And we're going to start with Adam Warlock and work our way down. I'll turn my camera off for this because I don't think you guys need it. It'll make editing a lot easier, and I really hope you guys enjoy this. Okay, starting for real, we have Adam Warlock up first. Adam Warlock's biggest strength is his multi-aspect deck building. He can take the best cards from every aspect, and that's very powerful. Now, one of his downsides is he can only deck build with one of each copy, but when it comes to powerful upgrades and supports and allies, you're often only taking one of these things anyway, so it's not that bad for a lot of things. Like ally-based decks for him, there's a lot of ally-based decks for him that are really good, and there's very little downside. If you like Cyclops taking X-Men from every aspect, well, he can do that and take, any traded allies from any aspect, and it has a lot of potential. So definitely a big benefits to be gained there. Some really unique combos, because Adam's such a weird character. Rather than have like the 1-player decks, 2-player, 3-player, 4-player, I've just got like all of his kind of decks archetypes like recommended here on the left column, and then on the right I've got like some specific card combos which I think are fun. He can take something like Lock and Load to get Sonic Rifle. He can also use it to get the laser swords out of Pool. Adam Warlock actually very good because of all the money and other little benefits there. You can do stuff like take Boot Camp to boost up the damage of your allies, and then Med Team to keep healing them. In addition to his own ability, because I actually really like his Battle Mage for ally healing. If you use Battle Mage, you can deal like 2 damage or remove 2 threat, or I can heal an ally for 1 hit point, which might lead to 2 damage or 2 threat removed, but it could be free, or it could be 3 damage and an ability attached to that ally. It's really good for hitting other people's signature allies. A lot of weird, unique potential in Adam Warlock. Aside from the multi-aspect deck building, the other biggest bonus for him, in my opinion, is Soul World. I think this is one of the strongest alter ego supports in the game. We may never see its like again. It is just a full heal, and you do have to deck out. You have to kind of run out of cards in your deck to charge it up, but Adam Warlock discards cards from his own deck, as do a lot of the Mystic-specific events, which means, typically in the game for me, he has more counters on Soul World than he can use. As soon as you're through that first deck pass, he's just going. Mystic Senses also will draw you through your deck fast, and you just, I'll just flip down and fully heal. Boost my hit points up a bit, sure, I'll just fully heal. You get so much value, it's really good. And he does have a good economy in the late game. He has 2 Mystic Senses, but 2 card draw, and he has a Staff, which is a very efficient resource generator, and he has access to Sorcerer Supreme as a Mystic. However, Adam Warlock starts really weak. I haven't done the numbers, but in my head he's like top 5 weakest starts in the game, maybe top 6 or 7, I don't know. But he starts with no extra money or resources, no extra card on the board, no extra card given to him. He starts with 1 attack and 1 fort, and the game asks him to set up a lot of cards to get to a good power level. Now the cards he wants to set up are really good, and like we said, even outside of his own cards, he can take the best stuff from any aspect, and that's really, what makes him. I consider Adam Warlock a slow build character who has potentially a very strong late game, but the early game is pretty bad. To add on to this, his events, I can play Karmic Blast. I don't know how much damage it's going to do until after I've played it. That's kind of a little bit of a downside, because you can only take 1 of each card. You don't know what you're going to draw at any time, and because he mills his own deck, he discards his own deck. You might have one of this really powerful card, and you just discard it. He does have a Quantum Magic, but he can discard those as well. There's kind of a little bit of an extra cost involved. There's only 2 per deck cycle, so definitely quite a few downsides going on with Adam Warlock, but some really interesting strengths as well. One of my big bits of advice for Adam Warlock is not to build with too many upgrades or supports because of his deck building, because you can take all the best like board upgrades from any aspect. It's really tempting to take too many of them, and then you just don't have enough tempo to win, when you probably could have made do with like half as many and actually, keep it in control of the game and win the game that way. Moving down to his archetypes, I've kind of separated these. Half of them are ally-based, and half of them are everything but allies. I just thought that was easier to organize. Because you can only take one ally generally anyway of each ally, and he can only take one, as we talked about, they're really good for him. He can just take like all the best Guardian allies from all the aspects, and then all the best like Guardian support cards from all the aspects. Things like that. He can do that with X-Men as well. I have a fairly well-known deck called Cyclops at home, which is just Adam Warlock pretending to be Cyclops. But you can take all 4 training upgrades, attack training, mission training, from all 4 of the main aspects, which is a really fun kind of thing to do. It is a bit slower. Same for like upgrading Guardian characters. Like I think that does better in multiplayer when someone else can cover the early game a bit. Has very powerful late game kind of possibilities. I should say all these kind of archetypes we're looking at here, I consider them kind of like rainbow builds or like mixed aspect builds, taking the best things from different aspects to build toward that purpose. Under other kind of little kind of niche kind of different build for him, you can have a taunt kind of deck. You can have toe-to-toe from aggression in combination with taunt and bait and switch from protection. So although he can only have 1 copy of taunt, he can have 2 other cards which also make the enemy attack him. So yeah, it's one of each card, but you can search the aspects for things which do similar, and because of his amazing self-healing in Soul World, the punishment for taking damage from these extra attacks doesn't matter to him as much as many other characters, so that's a fun little way to play him. Moving on to notable cards for him, and interestingly, he doesn't really want to take too many basic cards. The problem is, he has a lot of synergy with a lot of really good basic cards, so it's kind of tempting. Of all the Mystics, I think he does best with Blood Gem. It's damaging you to get you a resource, but he can heal with Soul World. Because he discards so much, Digging Deep and White Fox can actually be pretty good for him. Gamora also discards from your deck, which can synergize even more with Digging Deep and White Fox, but now you're just stacking up all these non-essential basic cards, but they are really, really good. And then in the aspects, we've got like good Guardian stuff, some of the Mystic events that came with him, like Magik Attack, Zone of Silence. I'm expecting to really like the new ally Deathcry from Hercules' hero pack coming up with Adam, because again, he's got that really good healing, and Deathcry provides good damage, which isn't Adam's strength, so that's really nice there. And the hero pairing I recommend the most by far is X-23. I love X-23 and Adam together. It's actually ridiculously good. X-23 loves Honey Badger, and Adam Warlock's Battle Mage ability, when you discard a protection card for it, can heal Honey Badger. But guess what? If Adam discards a leadership card instead, he can boost the stats of a hero, and it could be X-23, who loves to ready up a lot. Those Battle Mage abilities are so good for X-23. And whereas Adam has a weaker early game, X-23's early game is actually absurdly good and can definitely cover for Adam Warlock, while Adam Warlock kind of plays a support role, which a lot of the Mystics, except for Magik, quite often lean into, and it's just so good. Also, as a little note, Cable is mentioned in more heroes than he's not mentioned for. It felt disingenuous not to mention him because he has so much synergy with so many characters because of what he can provide, but I'm probably not going to mention him a lot. Just know that there's a side scheme out there that he can guarantee turn 1. That's going to absolutely change the game for basically any hero out there. Just got to match the right side scheme to the right hero. Next up, we have Angel. Angel has so many strengths, it's kind of absurd. He has an incredibly strong early game. He just plays cards and stuff happens. Really high tempo character. Tons of damage, particularly with his Archangel ability. He's got loads of threat removal though, and his cards are so flexible, they're really versatile. A lot of them can either do damage or remove threat, or if you play a threat removal one while you're in Archangel, the Archangel ability can then trigger to do damage, even though you played a pure threat removal card. Metamorphosis, so much flexibility in changing forms and combos. He is so strong and reliable, and yet he's also subject to what I perceive as his biggest weakness, that he must play 2 aerial events every turn or lose out on the abilities on his hero responses. And I actually think his average card value for his events is slightly below average because his abilities are so good. Now this might seem really weird, like, okay, these aerial events are pretty good and he's getting these really good abilities, but on a typical hero, even an aerial hero, you wouldn't be driven to play these events so much as Angel. And if you don't do them on Angel, you don't really get any Angel stuff going. So it's just kind of opportunity cost. It's making you play a certain way when the optimal way to play would probably not be to do that on other characters, if that makes sense. And, I think it's fine to have a play style. And I still think Angel is really strong, like really strong. But I think this is just so subtle and so interesting. The suggested archetypes for Angel here, honestly guys, there's not a lot, but there's variations in what you can do here. I don't see that, if you play him solo in aggression, there's just like one thing you can do, aerial events. You can actually, mix and match a couple of different events or build certain different things on top of it. Just changing a couple of cards because he wants to play so many events. Just tweaking the events in a small way can actually have a significant effect. You can even run the aerial hone technique deck in solo play, but I typically feel it's a little bit of overkill for this very high tempo character. And he does so much damage, he just wins solo games anyway. Actually a big fan of strength and numbers for him. I had a whole deck and write-up ready to go for this, and then I think quite a well-known deck builder just beat me to it, which is absolutely fine. But where he wants to play all these events, getting card draw is really, really good for him in general. Turbo draw decks as well can be really nice at lower player counts. Change of Fortune, actually not bad for him. You can take someone like Energy Barrier, but his defense event can potentially have Retaliate. And surprisingly, I actually think Change of Fortune can work pretty well for him at the same time. Actually, a quick shout out to one of the few characters I really recommend with Danger Pool, which is the kind of style of playing the pool aspect, the kind of funny one that came with Deadpool, that uses the negative icons. Normally, I would say the risk is high and the reward is only, kind of mediocre. It can still be fun, but it's not something I'm out here recommending. But for Angel, his Fording event can bypass Crisis. He also has an acceleration built into his Archangel form, and he can just flip to turn it off, flip back to turn it on when he wants to use an event to, be boosted by it, things like that. His support card can shuffle the threat removal card, which bypasses Crisis, back into his deck. It's actually insanely kind of synergistic. It works really well. Is it as good as the other aspects which actually have aerial events that he wants? Well, maybe not, but there is Mulligan as well to help him find events. Notable cards for Angel are probably pretty predictable here. There's a lot of aerial events, and there's a lot of events which are triggered by changing form, and they're all basically pretty good. I don't have a ton to add here. One interesting thing I'll say here is that I quite often find he has too many powers of flight, and I'm really looking for more aerial events or just, different tools in my hand. So sometimes I'd rather take like 2 copies of Team Building Exercise and only 1 to 2 power flights, whereas I know a lot of people like to run him with 3 power flights. I'm not really into running him with 3 power flights anymore. Maybe with Starhawk, but even then, I'm not super keen on it. I'd rather have more options in hand because that's kind of what he really wants. I've done quite a lot of recommended hero pairings for Angel just because of how the formatting per page worked here, and he works well with a lot of characters because he's so good from turn 1, and he has such good threat removal that he can help so many different heroes in different ways. Now, I want to shout out Captain Marvel, whose alter ego ability is card draw, that can help him find an aerial event where it just makes him using his abilities more consistent. It can even let him play an upgrade and still afford 1 to 2 aerial events where he otherwise wouldn't. So he's getting to set stuff up on his board and still get that aerial event goodness and the responses. Psylocke's here because of the team-up card, I really like that. And Psylocke's just great. Psylocke being able to swap her stats around, have a really good basic attack, works really well with Angel being flexible in what his events do as well. So those two can basically cover any situation at any time when combined. Also, a small but interesting consideration for multiplayer here is that Angel's Nemesis set is very deadly, but a character like Iron Man has only cheap events, which means he's never going to take too much damage. He's never in too much danger from what's going on with Angel's Nemesis set. Which I quite like. It's kind of just a small bonus, but if someone has really expensive cards, it can actually really punish them from Angel's Nemesis set. Moving on to Ant-Man, we have our form-changing damage hero. His biggest strength, in my opinion, is he has a ton of damage, whereas his army of ants and changing to giant form pinging 1 little damage, or giant stomp crushing his enemies underfoot, or giant basic attacks made with giant strength. He can do a lot of damage. And he's also very tanky. He's got a good defense stat, but more than that, he's got a lot of hit points and a ton of self-healing. Once he's got his helmet down and he changes form, he can heal for 2. Pin Particles heals him as well. And if you do go Alter Ego, which your obligation forces, you get to heal as well. So that's pretty nice. His biggest weakness, in my opinion, is his threat removal, and it's often fine for solo play, but it doesn't scale well. Yeah, if I change to small form, I ping a threat. He's got a forwarding stat of 2, pretty nice. But he's only got 1 threat removal event, and it's incredibly weak until you play multiple other cards, his army of ants, and even then it just kind of becomes, pretty good. You really have to get the 3rd one in for it to really stand out in a kind of meaningful way. But if you have 0 down or 1 down, it feels incredibly bad, and that's all he's got. So, if you're in free player and a big side scheme comes out, and you're not running Justice or something, Ant-Man's probably contributing the least of anyone on the table, potentially. His helmet is also so powerful that I could consider it a strength that, it's really good when he has his helmet in play, but you just really notice it when he does not have his helmet in play. Giant form feels a lot worse because of the hand size, so finding his helmet is a huge priority, and should you play it on turn 1 and then get caught off guard as your encounter card, you are incredibly, incredibly sad. I actually don't have a ton of suggested archetypes for Ant-Man either here. I think he's pretty straightforward in what he does. He changes form, and he punches stuff. And I actually really like him with repurpose, particularly with giant strength, giving him a really big attack stat for readying. Notable cards for Ant-Man include Face the Past. I don't think his nemesis is very intimidating. It has 4 health, so if you start in tiny form and change to, giant size, you get to deal 1 damage for changing form, then basic attack for free, and you've just dealt with your nemesis minion, and now you've got all these extra cards, to profit from it. And obviously, like Angel, he's another form changer, so those cards are all pretty good here. And Clarity of Purpose works really well for him on 2 fronts. I recommend Clarity of Purpose a lot, but here it helps fulfill the resource requirements on his gauntlets to stun or confuse, but also he has so much healing that, he can absorb the downside way easier than most characters. Recommended pairings I found harder for Ant-Man than 90%. Maybe he was in the top 3 characters I found it hard to pair with, because he needs threat removal, but he doesn't really have a lot of synergy going on with other characters in the game. So I ended up settling on Vision, who's just a really solid, steady remover of threat, one of the best threat movers in the game in my opinion. Vision's nemesis set involves drones, which Ant-Man being able to ping 1 damage by going to Giant Form, Army of Ants. Giant Stomp also does 1 damage across the board. Actually really good at countering that. And it's that kind of tiny thing that was I was just trying to find little interactions that actually had some kind of meaning beyond, hey, this guy doesn't fought that well, but is really attacky, So that's what I've got. Also, shoutouts to Wasp, who he has a really good team-up card with. Benefits him a lot more than Wasp, I think. Next up, we have Bishop, who is a resource-drawing burst damage hero, which means he draws a lot of resources, and he does a lot of burst damage, a lot of damage all at once. And his resource draw is just insane. He gets punched, you discard a bunch of cards. If any of them are resources, you draw them. And if you're playing Bishop, a good chunk of your deck is going to be resources, particularly if you use his defense card. Things can get a little bit crazy in the future with how many resources you draw. Bishop's Uniform is an incredible self-healing card, which means you're getting punched in the face, getting lots of money, and then you're getting healed up a lot. Playing this uniform is almost as important as Ant-Man playing his helmet, maybe more important. Bishop, without his uniform, has to play Marvel Champions. Bishop, with his uniform, bullies Marvel Champions and whoever he comes up against. There is some kind of downside here that you can have too many resources in hand and not enough places to put them, but on average, you are playing and doing more things than the average character because you can afford them, or your uniform and rifle are just getting so much value. It's generally very good, likes resource things. Things that you can have on the board typically that you spend excess resources on for less efficient value than normal, but it's better than not being able to spend your resources on anything. I typically recommend 8 to 12 resources as a good starting point. You can do less, and you can go a lot crazier as well with the right builds and right cards. There's quite a lot of fun archetypes for him. I absolutely love Taunt and Protection. Oh no, I got attacked again and drew 3 more resources, and then I get the free card draw from Taunt itself, and everything happens, and it's so much fun. He also just has a lot of money. He can afford a lot of allies, a lot of leadership builds. I really like Strength in Numbers to kind of match resources to cards that actually play, or vice versa. You can do a big Strength in Numbers play, get a bunch of resources in hand, and then your rifle will just absolutely destroy anything. Also, shoutouts to Husk builds or Builder Husk, putting a lot of upgrades onto Husk. I think she's the best resource thing in Marvel Champions. Moving on to look at recommended cards for him. Basically, it's just all the resource cards in the game. The pool ones are particularly good for him. Pool also has Healing Factor, which can let you be more flexible and consistent with your uniform, especially good before you've got your uniform as well. But generally, Pool is just really, really actually good for Bishop. And he can even afford the big, crazy expensive cards like the Bomb, which is pretty fun just as an inclusion. I absolutely love Superpower Training for him, just to get the uniform, and if you've got that, the rifle quicker for him, Lock and Load as well. Tons of good options. Huge fan of Avengers Mansion. He can afford it, and he absolutely loves the card draw. Looking at recommended pairings, we're going to bring up Captain Marvel again. Her ability to provide card draw to other characters is so good for characters that lack consistency or really need extra cards or can pull off crazier combos. It's really very powerful, and not a lot of other characters, basically almost no other characters, have inbuilt card draw. Some can draw cards for other players, like Deadpool with his Exhausting Personality card. He's on this list as well. Here is a good pairing for Bishop. But these characters don't start with a guaranteed turn 1 on their Alter Ego ability and can use it off turn, which is also really nice to help out Bishop in this case. Also, huge shout outs to Jubilee, who can guarantee Bishop's uniform round 1 with Shopping Spree, kind of like Cable can with Superpower Training, it's his alter ego ability too. But Jubilee, really nice here. Just have Jubilee exhaust first, and then Bishop, and you are golden. Next up, we have Black Panther, and this is the Shuri version, an upgrade triggering hero, and she's really weird. She's the only character who doesn't have a major team trait, which made categorizing her in the mobile version of this, which is sort of more categorized by trait, really annoying. And it gives her kind of less cards to interact with, but she has so much going on that it doesn't really hurt her. She has a lot of money from card draw and her own resources. Her damage and forwarding can be really precise. Turn 1 is a bit slow. Typically you use the alter ego ability, and then, what do? You just play your cards. It's still pretty decent, but definitely after that, you can start to do a ton of stuff with Shuri, which is really nice. Always wants to go alter ego, particularly once Elephant's Trunk is in play, because the card draw is out of this world. There's a fair mix of archetypes I suggest for her. With all the wild resources, I think stuff like Hone Technique is good. With like the weapons, like her claws, I actually think you can do stuff with firepower and things like that. Dora Milaje builds, whether you're using it with like boot camp or you're just using it in general and like enhancing it in leadership, can be really nice as well. And I absolutely love protection with the readying for her, so you can trigger her upgrades more because they trigger from readying. It's really nice. Also, shout outs to Sidekick. If you can get Sidekick onto T'Challa, who is pretty expensive, once you get it going side by side, absolutely annihilates the game. Notable cards for her, there's actually quite a few decent ones. I actually think her Face the Past is pretty nice here. It readies her, which is obviously good. Card draw is something she can do quite a lot with, and her Nemesis isn't that bad. 5 hit points, but no real bad abilities. I'm a huge fan of build support for the Elephant's Trunk. I'm almost always taking the Dora Milaje support card, even if I haven't taken the allies, because you can use it to exhaust for Elephant's Trunk and get more card draw, but I'm usually taking the allies. I really like getting even more card draw and just using all that synergy. It's really fun. Sonic Rifle is a good tech card she can get for alter ego ability is there. Also a big fan of Energy Barrier, and because she can get tech with that alter ego ability and has her own tech, Spider Bite, dirt cheap for her, really nice. Recommend the pairings for her. One of them's going to be T'Challa, their team up card, Heart of the Panther. Incredibly fun, one of my most favorite ones in the game, I think. I just really like it. Other than that, she really just needs like maybe a little bit of early game coverage, and she's pretty self-sufficient. She can heal a lot, she can deal quite a bit of damage, she can remove a lot of threat if she gets the right cards at the right time, but being able to shuffle stuff back in definitely helps. I actually quite like Venom to be paired with her. I think Spider Bites is really good against his Nemesis minions. They both like Lock and Load and Superpowered Training, and he kind of covers like some of the early stuff and can kind of flexibly kind of work around whatever Black Panther upgrades she's triggering with his flexible weapons and vice versa. Black Panther T'Challa is up next, who's also an upgrade triggering hero, but he has to use events where Shuri, can use events, but she also often does it off basic attacking, basic forwarding, and so on. Like Shuri, he also has really good economy, and he also has a bit of a slower round 1. He can go fast, but there's a bit of a kind of cost sink in setting up your first Black Panther upgrade, but from then on, you are absolutely golden. Notably, he has quite a lot of resources and a lot of cheap Wakanda Forevers, so 2+ cost cards are really good to deck build with him, and he likes going alter ego a lot for Golden City, much like Shuri does for the Elephant's Trunk. Now, to look at T'Challa's suggested archetypes from me, I think there's a lot he can do. A lot of people say he doesn't have much he can do across the aspects, but I disagree. I think he has a lot of hooks. There's wild resources, he's got weapons with his claws and his energy daggers. There's now Dora Milaje stuff. He can really easily afford boot camp. Justice covers, I guess his forwarding is a little bit of a weakness compared to his damage and survivability. That's quite nice. Justice Black Panther is extremely well-rounded and very good. And leadership has a lot going on. You can use your resources to make a lot of different things happen. Cards I recommend, there's going to be some similar ones to Shuri, like Superpowered Training, like Avengers Mansion, a lot of stuff like that. I think Yellow Jacket is potentially very good for him to help him set up quicker. In Justice, you'll see characters like T'Challa and Shuri. They have a lot of cards which confuse or increase the threat threshold, or you look at the encounter card just to make it safe to go alter ego. That's why Gambit is included for a lot of these characters with one player as a recommendation as well, just to help you safely go alter ego without losing the game at lower player counts. But even it's just helpful and efficient at higher player counts with some of these cards as well. You'll see quite a few resource things here as well, like Machine Man, Husk, Starhawk, that kind of thing, which works really well for T'Challa in the late game. Team up's obviously going to be Shuri. I really love that team up card, Heart of the Panther. Also really like Cyclops. If Cyclops puts exploit weakness, presumably on the villain, when Black Panther triggers Wakanda Forever, his claws and his vibranium suit counters attacks. They both get boosted by Cyclops' exploit weakness, and if you can play like a couple of Wakanda Forevers when exploit weakness is on the villain, you rack up a lot of damage very quickly, which I think is very fun. Next up, we have Black Widow, who's what I'm calling a preparation control hero, also maybe a trap card hero, because, preparations are basically like traps for the enemies. And her main strength is she can control the board a lot this way. She can stun minions, she can reduce damage from attacks, she can cancel treacheries. The big downside here is that basically all her preparations really want her to be in hero form, but she gets so many bonuses from being Alter Ego. The big card that changes this, which is big enough to actually build a whole deck around, as well as just being good for whatever deck you have, is Ready for a Fight, which means when you get schemed against, you actually get attacked, you actually end up in hero form. So you can go Alter Ego, get all those benefits, then throughout most of the villain phase, you'll be in hero form and able to actually use your preparations immediately. It's so good for her, and it's mainly the only way I want to play her these days, I'm going to be honest. But she's been around for a long time. A lot of people have enjoyed her, hit and miss, but a lot of people actually love Black Widow, and you can do a lot of her in all the aspects aside from Ready for a Fight. She's a little bit low damage. She's a little bit slow tempo. You're setting up these preparations hoping they're going to go off, and they're quite preventative. She's good at stopping problems from happening, but once a problem has happened, she's not very good at solving it. I actually really like playing her in aggression, really go for like the kind of assassin style. I think it's really fun. There's a lot of crazy stuff in leadership. Her signature ally can end up being 0 cost a lot of the time, which is absurd. Rapid response as well, probably the most powerful preparation in the game that you can now recur with practice plan to get allies back for cheap. Really very good. But she has a ton of tech and repurpose access and a little bit of readying potential with her suit. Interesting stuff she can do. A lot of protection cards have really helped her out. And obviously, she's a classic example of a character that might like shield archetype, because she has some shield cards. She has her safe house, which can be readied up with cards like Agent 13. Notable cards for her, there's going to be a lot of preparation cards here, a lot of tech interaction. I really like actually aggressive energy and keep up the pressure for her in aggression, which boosts the damage of all of her attacks from Dance of Death, which is very satisfying. Shoutouts to the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. kind of wave and expansion. Leo Fitz and Gemma Simmons were a huge boost for Black Widow, along with Ready for a Fight, which came with Silk's pack. So there's a lot of really good stuff there that's really boosted her. Not to mention her new team-up card with Winter Soldier, which is going to lead us into recommended pairings. Winter Soldier provides damage, which she can kind of be lacking. A lot of good tempo, good threat removal as well if there are minions coming out, which in 2-player you're going to be seeing a few. And Widow's Bite can make it really easy for him to deal with them. So there's a lot to love there. Also shoutouts to Tigra, who isn't released yet in the UK. We're almost there, I'm sure of it. But Widow's Bite on minions that Tigra has engaged with her is so good. She gets to keep them around for an extra turn for free effectively, and they're easier to deal with when she needs to. And Tigra provides a lot of damage that, again, Black Widow can really appreciate. Next up, we have Cable, who I've done a little bit differently when it comes to hero pairings, but his strengths are really good threat removal, and his amazing setup ability to get any player's side game basically out of his deck. And you can use it after seeing what's in your opening hand and mulligan, so you can just basically pick the perfect thing based on the scenario, what you have in your hand, what you need, and if you're a multiplayer, whoever else is there as well. And getting a good turn 1 is just phenomenal, honestly. I think turn 1 is the most impactful turn in any game of Marvel Champions, and Cable always has an excellent turn 1 if you build right and pick the right player side scheme at the start. His late game is absurd. The more player side schemes in the victory display, the more his events do, and they do a lot. I'd say his biggest weakness is damage in the early game, but you can kind of deck build and play around it fairly effectively. Quick recommendation is in multiplayer, typically don't have him as the first player, so other players can weaken the side scheme that you put out to start with, and you can come in, finish it off, and then guarantee that you get to ready up and benefit from your hero ability as well. And also Body Slide, which lets all heroes kind of like change form with you, is so good for some heroes, especially if you're like in 3 or 4 player with multiple characters that benefit from extra form changes. It's kind of absurd. Also, while I really like Grey Malkin from build support as like a really good turn 1 opener, and also something like a powerful 4-cost ally from Call for Backup can be a really high tempo option. If you find an ally with free threat removal on the first turn, you can take Specialized Training, then you can get a Surveillance Specialist turn 1, and you can just one-shot all the side schemes while getting an extra card draw for like the rest of the game in solo. Is incredibly good too. Archetypes for him are slightly limited. You're going to see a lot of stuff around like side schemes and forwarding. The Uncanny X-Force archetype, basically built specially for Cable, and the other X-Force are just lucky if they can get some benefit from it. Actually, several can. We'll talk about that as we go, but I think typically it's just so good for Cable. It seems really like it's meant for him, and it dominates side schemes, which is what he's all about. Notable cards, we're going to see a lot of threat removal, we're going to see a lot of side schemes, but the player's side schemes I put here are the ones I think are most powerful and generally most useful. Some of these are the ones that I'm adding to the deck, and as I'm building the deck, I might remove if I have to, rather than, add as I go, because some of them are just so good for him and can just combo really nicely. Shoutouts to the Manifold ally that we got recently in Shuri's pack that can just find a player side scheme. Cable can really benefit from that as well. Also, shoutouts to X-Bunker, which I think came in X23's pack. I absolutely love the kind of control over the card draw you get from that. I think it's really good. Oh, and at the top of the basic section, these are 4 allies which have potentially free threat removal. That mean whatever aspect you're in, because Justice obviously has access to thwarting events, etc. You have a really good chance to be able to one-shot specialized training on turn 1 solo, which is a strategy I quite enjoy. In terms of pairing for Cable, man, Cable has the most impactful and most sort of variety of multiplayer pairings in the game, and I don't think it's close. I thought Cyclops, Storm, characters like that, Scarlet Witch can put Tufts elsewhere. Adam Warlock actually has quite a lot of support things he can do by healing other players' allies and boosting stats and things, but nothing comes close to the impact Cable can have, because it isn't just that he can use side schemes, to get good upgrades or supports for people, but even body side can be impactful. Then we've got Angel, who we've already talked about. His Nemesis set can actually make you take a lot of damage without warning, and actually so can Cable's. But Cable's telekinetic force field can help protect Angel from his Nemesis set, as well as Cable's own one, which is really, really nice to have. You can also use, I didn't actually list it, I don't think, but telekinetic force field can potentially save Deadpool from randomly getting defeated as well. I think I go into that in more detail in Deadpool section. But there's just so many little things Cable can do. A lot of heroes in Marvel Champions have a very kind of insular, kind of self-contained design, but Cable's is all reaching outwards to help and affect other players, which I absolutely love. The amount of ticks almost don't matter here as much as I've got these different categories, the way I've done it for Cable here, so much as the impact they make. But someone like Quicksilver, Cable is just a game changer. Quicksilver, if we were to rate him on a tier list with and without Cable, with Cable, I'd say he jumps up 2 whole tiers. It's actually crazy. Oh, Penny as well, Spider, just so good with Cable. Oh, and I should have mentioned that Deadpool has that team up card with Cable as well. Next up we have Captain America, who's a really, really good all-rounder, one of the best jack-of-all-trades in the game, but I think that's almost inaccurate, because actually, he's really good at doing everything while being an actual defense specialist. He's incredibly tanky. He's got 3 stuns, 2 amazing defense cards, 3 defense, and an alter ego support that heals him. Yeah, it's no Aunt May, but it's still, pretty nice to have. He has a built-in resource sink as well, which is really forgiving for new players and, for different deck builds, and can actually let you go crazy with the deck builds on purpose, knowing that, yeah, leftover cards, I've got somewhere to put those. It's actually quite hard to talk about his strengths, in a general sense, because he's just kind of good at everything. His weaknesses are quite small, if he stuns the enemy in solo play, his shield block might miss, might not get to use it. If you go alter ego to benefit from his living legend ability, then you might draw shield block and you can't use it, but it's whatever. He's just so flexible that none of this stuff matters too much. He's just a very dependable character, as Captain America really should be. There's a lot of archetypes for him, a lot of ones to do with readying or to do with allies, because he can ready every turn from turn 1, and he has a discount on allies on turn 1, and whenever he's alter ego. He also comes with that free defense once you play this shield, which you almost always do, which leads into a lot of defensive kind of builds for him. And unlike Spider-Man Peter Parker, he can actually do some defensive stuff and still quite competently cover threat and board control damage and all these different things, which is really, really useful. Interestingly, for Captain America, I recommended a lot less cards than I expected to, and this isn't because there aren't many cards which work with him. It's because all the cards work with him, and I really wanted to put notable cards here, and almost every card just is good with Captain America. So these are ones with special synergy, things which increase his stats because he can ready a lot, things which benefit potentially him having a lot of physical resources like Yarnborn in aggression or stick-to-itiveness in pool, which is also good because he has readying and stat boosts. For multiplayer pairings, we've got Winter Soldier, who have another new team-up card, which is called Super Soldiers, and I absolutely love it. It is so good and so fun. You can have some anti-synergy with shield block or, heroic strike even a little bit, but I don't care. It is so good and so fun. Adam Warlock actually coming in here again. The stat boost is really nice. I could have put Storm here. I don't think I did because I put Storm with so many characters. A bit of a variety, but Storm's stat boost with Thunderstorm is really good. I actually think Captain America is a really good pairing for a lot of Avengers. She-Hulk loves stuns on the villain, and Captain America is great at that. Hawkeye needs help defending, and with threat removal, Captain America, because he's so flexible, can do both. And I actually really like X-23 and Captain America. I think they have a lot of similarities. So when you put them together, you can kind of see their strengths, their flexibility, their quick pace, and, it's just quite fun to watch. And actually, X-23 really likes to play Honey Badger, so Living Legend kind of helps her play a really essential card in that way, which is just a little bonus, but those kind of things can actually be quite helpful, because if X-23 can play Honey Badger for one cheaper, good chance she can play one of her amazing zero-cost events in addition, which are very, very good. Next up is Captain Marvel, who I've already talked about her drawing cards for other heroes. Her strong economy is so good, she has 2 triple resource cards, so much card draw, and also what I'd call card cycling. So she can kind of spend a resource to draw a card in hero form, which just lets you see more of your deck faster, get rid of your worst option with an energy resource, and then get something new, or spend a resource generator later on. She also has incredibly good burst damage. Her attack event draws you a card, potentially more attacks, but really it's her energy channel which she can build up and store tons of damage on the board. And the thing is, her economy powers her damage, so she can rush with the best of them, and she just has a lot of damage she can deal, and it's very, very good. Her biggest weakness is that several of her identity-specific cards are actually weaker than you'd expect, but thanks to card draw and tons of money, she doesn't really notice it. She also has less threat removal than average. She's got 2 thwarting, and she doesn't typically want to basic defend ever, so she can usually thwart for 2, but her threat removal card is pretty bad. There's quite a lot of aspects, sort of synergies you can do with her too. Since she doesn't really need to defend very much or, need much defense, ally stuff goes pretty well here. Anything using energy resources is kind of nice. Anything that wants to attack, she's just good at damage. And because she's got good card draw, she can actually put together combos really easily or really nicely, or set things up like strength in diversity or strength in numbers really, really quick. Also possibly the best user of shield archetype in the game, maybe outside of Maria Hill, but she kind of does it differently. I don't know it's quite the same. But Agent 13 can ready up Alpha Flight Station, which is her crazy alter ego support, which draws you 2 cards. So with Agent 13, you're just drawing 4 cards, which seems fine, because with your alter ego ability, you're actually drawing 5 cards. Bigger hand size for the next turn, maybe 6 cards. Bunch of the cards you drew probably draw cards anyway. It's a lot of card draw. I actually really like the Mulligan archetype for Paul with her, which I haven't talked about yet in the video, which is a term I kind of coined where when you play Mulligan, it's a card which discards your whole hand and draws you a new hand, and the restriction is you can't play it if you've already played a card, so you kind of have to do it as the first thing in your turn. However, the restriction is only about playing cards, so if you spend a card or discard a card for an ability, not playing a card, you can still play Mulligan after you've already spent resources, so you can kind of replenish your hand. So with Energy Channel and her hero ability, she actually has multiple ways to spend a resource without playing a card, and she can just replenish her hand and just draw even more cards. Notable cards for her, I think Face the Past is good because her nemesis is super weak and she has tons of damage. Beyond that, Clarity of Purpose is just basically essential for her in leadership these days because it guarantees you can use your hero ability. Not only does it provide the energy resource, but it makes you take a damage, which you kind of need. You need to have taken damage to be able to use your hero ability, and it kind of just solves everything. Oh, and Beast. Beast gets you a resource card, and she has triple value resource cards. Yeah, it's kind of nice. When it comes to pairings, I'm really excited to talk about Captain Marvel with Maria Hill. I think it's one of my favorite pairings in Marvel Champions. Maria Hill can ready Alpha Flight Station with her on the double event, which turns a zero-cost card basically into 2 cards. Maria spends a zero-cost event, and Captain Marvel suddenly has 2 more cards. That is just incredibly good. But even more than that, Captain Marvel's alter ego ability for Maria Hill guarantees Maria Hill has a dynamite, amazing first round, because she can afford something really expensive, and if she had a second really vital card, but normally she would have had to spend it on that support or something, she can now keep it in hand or something. You can even do stuff like play Maria Hill's resource generator, play a big support, sometimes play multiple of these support things. It just really opens up Maria Hill's turn 1, and if Maria Hill has a good turn 1, you have won the game. Maria Hill's biggest weakness is tempo, and Captain Marvel is a very high tempo, does a lot very quickly, tons of cards, tons of money, tons of things she can just quickly do, and Maria Hill will then just carry everything. Though carry is maybe an unfair word, because Captain Marvel will still massively contribute, it just becomes hard to lose. I also want to shout out Hulk. The alter ego card draw from Captain Marvel can really save Hulk's turns, because he quite often has such awkward cards, and if he had one more card, he could do this amazing thing, and without it, if you've got a dead card in hand, you've wasted a card. So if someone gives you one card draw that lets you use it, that one card draw kind of lets you use a second card as well, so it's almost worth double the card draw, if that makes sense, which is just so useful for Hulk more than most characters. Next up is our resident tough status card damage hero, Colossus. He is pretty high damage, but he is practically invincible when it comes to taking attacks. He has so many tough status cards, 14 base hit points. He's just an absolute nightmare for any villain to defeat, which is great for Colossus. The problem is he has some of the worst falling in the game in my opinion, and unexpected damage, like a boost effect damage or like a random ping from an encounter card that's not an attack that you could, otherwise somehow block. If you happen to just randomly lose your tough status cards from all this, you have no tough status cards left, you can't use a lot of your signature cards. They become useless, which is really, really bad. And kind of weird that the big tough Colossus could actually, kind of not want to take too much damage in some cases. But there are new cards to really help him with generating toughs in protection especially. And he has some really good strengths. Like when his engine is going, once you have his key upgrades down, like Iron Will is like the big one, you just have tons of card draw, make big combos happen and win the game. Also, shoutouts, he wants to go Ultra Ego almost every turn because you get bigger hand size, you get a tough when you go back to hero form, and it's just very, very effective. Moving on to suggested archetypes for him, he likes to punch stuff, so aggression works well, but protection is where all the tough generation stuff is. So if you have a full card collection, I really like protection. However, for solo play, to cover his biggest weakness, I highly, highly recommend Justice. If you're not using Justice, make sure you've got some allies with pretty good threat removal. It will help you a significant amount for Colossus. Yeah, you can win games without it, but it will be a lot more consistent, and allies also help you. You can block with them and protect your toughs when you need to. Suggested cards for Colossus, Limitless Stamina. He's a 14 hit point character that just kind of goes in the deck immediately. Loves Death Focus as well because he's a lot of superpowers, including Limitless Stamina if you include it. Likes to boost his basic attack with combat training. Doesn't really need to boost his health with something like aggressive conditioning, but if you're building like into the readying a lot, you can definitely still bring it anyway. Loves ways to help him go Ultra Ego more consistently, though he does have a few confuses of his own to use. And actually really like him in pool because often, sometimes this won't happen, but a lot of the time, I'll finish a Colossus game, won't have taken a single point of damage, so the pool resources would have been triple resources for the entire game. And he actually has a ton of physical resources, which is really good for something like dropkick and aggression, or stick-to-itiveness in pool. Protection, we've got Polaris, who is like the most amazing ally for him, because she can give him a tough. Ready for a Fight, however, is a huge, game-changing card for Colossus that is incredibly, incredibly good. In terms of multiplayer pairings, he's got a good team-up card with Wolverine, Fastball Special, very, very fun. Shadowcat has a team-up card with him as well. I actually really like Maria Hill, Doctor Strange, and Scarlet Witch because all of them can give him tough status cards. When Colossus has a constant supply of tough status cards from elsewhere, he is just on another level. Up next is another X-Men. We have Cyclops, our tactical support hero. He can bring X-Men from any aspect, very much like, Adam Warlock taking in a card from any aspect. This time it's allies. The X-Men allies are probably some of the best allies in the game. Allies are, in my opinion, the strongest card type, so this is a very good ability. However, it's not his only strength. Due to the format of this document, I couldn't include Optic Blast, but I think that triggering off any upgrade being on an enemy gives him a really consistent ability to control minions, just put free damage out there. But what he has, more than almost any character in the game, with maybe one or two exceptions, but it's debatable, he can tutor cards, also known as searching for cards. He can use his Alter Ego ability, his signature ally, or his thwarting event to search up the perfect card to solve different situations to use in different ways, and that kind of control over your deck and having the right thing at the right time makes his consistency just shoot through the roof. When you combine it with the sheer value from the best allies from different aspects, he is an absolute powerhouse that can do a lot of stuff. But you don't have to build heavily into allies, you can just use a few. He's actually extremely competent because of these other strengths when you don't have a single X-Men ally in your deck, aside from your signature ally. The biggest downside I can really say is that, you can't use a couple of cards to their full effectiveness if you don't happen to draw an upgrade to put on an enemy, but that's fairly rare, and even then you can probably just play an ally, so he tends to have a pretty good time. Due to the amount of characters he works well with, I'm formatting this slightly different, so to save space, I'm not doing his archetypes by player count, but certain ones that are any good in multiplayer, I have put the little 2 to 4 in square brackets behind, but generally, anything ally-based, he absolutely does really well with, and I especially like running him in 2 to 4 player with multi-target attacks. I've got a Master Blaster deck on Marvel CDB, which can now be massively upgraded, particularly with the air cover card, which means we can probably just move on down to the notable cards for him. Air cover and aggression is an absolute no-brainer. Use priority target as much as you can. That card is insane. Leadership, obviously Uncanny X-Men, to me my X-Men. Basically, his extra signature card is when you play him in the blue aspect. Rapid Response is a tactic upgrade, which works with his Alter Ego ability and his threat removal card. You can also take Energy Shield in protection, slap it on the villain so you can like Optic Blast them. And the nice thing about some of the allies I've mentioned here, like Rogue in protection, is I can be playing in leadership and I can still just take Rogue in my deck. I can still take Dazzler from Justice. I can still take Gold Balls, Psylocke, and or Sunfire from aggression, which leads to very good things happening. Also, shoutouts to Mutant Education with Cyclops. This is a card which shuffles your signature cards back into your deck if you're a mutant. Getting a more priority target is just so good, but his cards in general are very useful to have, and it can keep his Alter Ego ability firing even longer, as it's possible to search out all the valid cards for it that you can, and this puts them back. So for Cyclops, much like Cable, I paired him with slightly less characters, but there's still a huge chart here of who he likes to pair with, and again, I wouldn't put the kind of amount of ticks as the main kind of deciding factor here as to like who's his best pairing. It's more like the impact of them. But definitely like Iceman, he provides enemy upgrades, which really helps Cyclops out. He likes to exploit weakness, particularly like his snow clones. You know, if Iceman attacks, then maybe readies from his cryokinetic card. Then both of his snow clones attack. It's all getting extra damage from exploit weakness, which is nice. Practice defense stacks with the frostbites, which is good. And Iceman loves card draw, particularly with his like somewhat clunky kind of like card cost and things. Also, shoutouts to Storm. Both of these characters, Cyclops and Storm, kind of support characters that can boost each other's damage, which gets pretty crazy. And I should also mention, here's a team-up card with Phoenix. Okay, guys, we are only like 25, 26 pages into this document of like 150 pages. So I'm probably going to pick up the pace here a little bit. Starting with Deadpool, who's a character that knows a lot about going very fast, can win games very, very quickly. Super high damage character, crazy burst combos. Yeah, you can build into symbiote suit and absolutely annihilate the villain, but he is still really, really, really good without that. His hero ability gives him pseudo-immortality, but the wrong boost effect or treachery card can often defeat him, which is his big weakness. Some people think, oh, it's only a couple of scenarios, most of the time he's fine. Actually, it's a significant amount of scenarios, particularly if you look at the harder ones, particularly if you change up mod sets. So as the difficulty goes up, Deadpool gets kind of worse, like more likely to be defeated, but he's still an incredibly powerful character, obviously. His archetypes are like somewhat limited in my opinion. You can do some different stuff with him. He's actually not bad with Uncanny X-Force sidekick stuff. You can just take different rush decks. You can take decks that make you get attacked, like Punching Bag for aggression, which is stuff like toe-to-toe, or, you know, Protection, Taunt, I think pretty self-explanatory. Also, really good with Pool. I feel like a lot of the Pool cards are made to work really well with him, and I feel like Deadpool, in the Pool aspect, somehow doesn't get enough credit. Looking at cards he likes, there's quite a few things that boost his health. He absolutely loves Face the Past because his Nemesis minion is a bit of a joke. Loves Mutant Education to put cards back into his deck, but my favourite card for him by far is Energy Shield, which if you build with a majority of energy resources, basically guarantees him being completely invincible. So Energy Shield lets you spend energy resources to prevent damage. Deadpool only needs to block a couple, maybe from the odd boost card or treachery effect, just to make sure he's super invincible, because otherwise his regenerating degenerate ability is going to keep him alive. So I basically only play Deadpool in protection these days with Energy Shields, because I mostly play two-player. I hate randomly just losing out of nowhere with nothing I really could have done about it, except play ultra safe in a boring way when I'm trying to play like crazy character Deadpool. So Energy Shield lets me go as crazy as I like without randomly losing. For recommended pairings, we've obviously got Cable with the team-up card, but Cable's precognition card and telekinetic force field card can actually stop Deadpool randomly losing to damage, which is also really, really nice. And Deadpool can provide insane burst forwarding from Yoo-Hoo, which can really help Cable with certain side schemes, particularly in the early game, particularly in 3 and 4 player. Next up, we have Doctor Strange, who's a hero that needs no introduction, but I'm going to introduce him as a status card support hero, but he's so good at support, he can kind of support himself to overwhelming victories. His main strength is his Invocation deck, and its main strength, I would say, is actually survivability. I think the Invocation that gives out Tufts is actually almost better than his like card draw card. His big weakness is a lack of damage, like particularly for like minions, but that can be easily fixed with deck building or different players filling that kind of damage role in multiplayer. He absolutely loves readies because that lets him use more invocations, and using lots of invocations kind of breaks the game. The value is kind of absurd. Archetypes for him, there's a lot of stuff that wants to ready, but aside from that, like card draw is good, and just ally stuff is good, particularly like him handing out tufts or being able to afford stuff, set up a strong board, and allies help do that damage to minions when he otherwise doesn't like have particularly good damage. So that all works out really nicely there. In terms of what cards he wants to bring, obviously we've got all the mystic stuff like Sorcerer Supreme and Spiritual Meditation. Here's a little hot take for you. I think Spiritual Meditation is better than the Sorcerer Supreme. Spiritual Meditation is good no matter what form you start in, where Sorcerer Supreme can be offline, but it just makes your kind of whole deck so much more consistent and get the best stuff out faster, such as his cape, which is why he likes superpowered training. Then there's really just a lot of good stuff for like setting up, getting the right thing at the right time. Mystic events here. Recommended pairings, it's gotta be Colossus. Giving him those tough cards is so good. Protecting Groot's growth counters is also incredibly valuable here. But since he's got good fording and really good at keeping people alive, Hawkeye really benefits from these, but then Hawkeye also provides damage, which Doctor Strange can kind of lack, particularly for minions, particularly earlier on. Oh, and shout out to Jubilee and Cable for being able to guarantee Cloak of Levitation turn 1, which is a little bit silly. Domino is up next, and her main strength, in my opinion, is that she's incredibly rich. You can use Jackpot, which is a triple resource, then use it again, and sometimes again, but you also get extra digging deeps. She's got really good support cards. She can afford a lot of good resource generators as well. Plus she has really good damage. Once the pistol engine is firing, nothing will survive for too long. And probability field, not exhausting, makes readying on Domino crazy good. Her biggest weakness is her like 1 fording stat, and that she wants to go Alter Ego almost every turn, because the Alter Ego benefits are almost off the charts. But she does have a couple of good fording events. She does have Luck Be a Lady, which can remove threat. And she is good at like finding the right cards, shuffling them around, taking them from a discard pile back if she wants to. She can actually kind of almost infinitely recur Professor X or like Nick Fury Sr. for like 5 threat removal, like guaranteed there. So there are some fun combos to be done. I really like her in leadership. She does have 2 signature allies, but even outside of those, there's a lot of fun stuff she can do. Readying is good, and just her wild resources make stuff like honed technique really, really easy. Anything that requires like different resource types, you're going to see that in some of the cards she likes too. Ready for a Fight as a card, also like an archetype because you build around using it. Also because she wants to go Alter Ego a lot, Justice just typically works out pretty well for her. The cards that I think she really likes is obviously Digging Deep and White Fox and Sharpshooter, which, yep, it's here. Basically, she likes a lot of basic cards, and they are almost, in my opinion, 3 copies of Digging Deep, a copy of White Fox, a copy of Sharpshooter. Like her extra 5 signature cards, she basically has 20 signature cards, but I'm also taking Avengers Mansion. Deadpool, I think, is really good for her. Build support is really valuable. With all those wilds, I think Multi-Talented is actually surprisingly like good and easy to achieve everything. Jackpot is like perfect for it if you don't have anything else to spend it on. Since she can like swap the top card of her deck, Wolfbane never misses. You can do stuff like that with Hulk. That's like my favorite thing to do. It's so good. Not to mention Pool, Rock, Paper, Scissors will never miss because she can swap cards with the top of her deck. All the wilds, stick-to-itiveness always hits, so you get the probability, like field ready, bonus damage, fording, whatever you want. It's so good. Recommended pairings, I'm going to start here with Spider-Woman. Spider-Woman can look at the top of Domino's deck, which lets you kind of get extra control over your stuff, because yes, you can swap some at the top of your deck, but quite often you don't know what you're going to get, and usually it's somewhere between good and extremely good, but Spider-Woman just gives you that little bit extra control that you can make more tactical, better decisions for. Luck Be a Lady is also a way to heal Spider-Woman's signature ally, which is extraordinarily high value. Also, shoutouts to Rogue, who can take the Posse trait from Domino, and then the Posse event can actually ready up Rogue and Domino and all of Domino's allies, something like that. I think that's a pretty fun little twist. Drax is up next, and his strengths are super high damage. He can get to like absurdly high damage and do these absurdly huge damage combos and win games. His survivability is actually incredibly high as well. The reason it doesn't feel that high is because he really wants to take damage and doesn't really want to defend very much if he can help it. So he's really good at surviving, but he wants to invite extra damage, which is kind of an interesting mixture. His big weakness is his terrible fording, and he starts off really slow with only 1 attack stat, but there are ways to build up pretty fast these days, so deck building can cover for a lot of this. Obviously, he really likes protection, that's where most readying can be found, but aggression and leadership actually have a lot of really good decks for him these days. I love Noble Sacrifice for him. In aggression, in solo, like you're probably just trying to rush down the villain, I'm not going to lie. taking, much threat removal, a little bit tricky. Basic allies are going to be your friend as usual. In multiplayer, absolutely just do not even try putting him in Justice. Yeah, I mean, it can be done, but he might be the worst or second worst character for it in the entire game. And you really want him dealing damage, which all the other aspects are even better at helping him. Actually really like him in pool as well, which can help heal him with stuff like healing factor and ready him with stick-to-itiveness. This seems like a great time to talk about cards for him. Take limited stamina, do yourself a favor, ready up more, and profit. In solo play, Grant Ward is really good for that, really cheap threat removal, because Drax doesn't want expensive cards. Most of his cards are cheap, most of them are really good, and they're all focused on what he wants to do, which is stab people a lot. There's really a lot of attack boosting cards and readying cards here, and then cards which will help him survive, such as Moment of Triumph in Aggression, Noble Sacrifice in Leadership, and things like Come Get Me Bub, What Doesn't Kill Me, Shake It Off, and so on in Protection. Shoutouts to Med Team, things to try and keep Mantis alive is a little kind of helpful tip, because if Mantis is just on the board every turn, Drax is generally alive every turn, and if Drax is alive every turn, the villain is on an increasingly short timer. Recommended pairings, again we're going to have Maria Hill. You're going to see support characters pop up a lot here, and much like Colossus and Groot, if Drax is protected from attacks, Drax can just do everything. The world is his oyster, and the Hercules provides all the toughs he could want. But more than that, the healing from the Iliad, can heal other identities. Drax can really like that too. Scarlet Witch is here as well. The reason I didn't put Doctor Strange here is because his invocations will sometimes lead to him probably stunning the villain, and Drax doesn't like stuns, whereas Maria Hill and Scarlet Witch, they can stun the villain, but the Pericles and Hexbolt can actually be chosen to give tough status cards instead, which is just perfect. Also, shoutouts to Storm, so good with any readying character, but Drax is one of the best. That +1 attack bonus from Thunderstorm goes very, very far, and the -1 to the villain's attack from Blizzard actually does a lot for Drax just normally, but with the taunts he has naturally and might want to bring. In fact, I didn't say it, but Taunt is my favorite card for him. It's so good now, maybe with Come and Get Me Bub to help him survive for cheap. I just think the combos are really, really absurd. Next up, we have Falcon, one of the most complicated characters in the game. He is a control character. He has so much control over the encounter deck. Notably, once Aerial Recon is in play, that card is just unfathomably good, particularly for 1-2 player. You can have so much control, but it's still good at 3 and 4 player. It doesn't get worse. There's just more things going on, and it can only control so much, but it's not worse. It's just Falcon is dominating his quarter of the game, and then the other heroes don't have something like Aerial Recon to dominate their quarter of the game typically. There's so many strengths I could say here that add up. He can look at boost cards, and if the villain's has a stun or confused, he can potentially solo play, or sometimes even in 2 player if they're stunned and confused. He can see the encounter card coming up, he can kind of set that up on top of the encounter deck, and he can also deal one with Aerial Recon. He is really tough to defeat. He's got very high survivability, tons of money. His signature ally, which he can have from turn 1, is super versatile, and he's obviously, along with Angel, Mr. Aerial. His downsides are his abilities aren't guaranteed how much damage or falling they're going to do. Multiple of his sort of signature cards want him to exhaust, which has some kind of anti-synergy and conflict. He doesn't come with enough readies naturally to make use of all of them, so I typically only play 1 or 2 throughout a game. And he has kind of low damage and low impact cards, which I think a lot of people struggle with. In Marvel Champions, most characters' signature cards absolutely carry the game and will have a win condition built in, do most of the things they need. Falcon is quite a supportive character in a way, and his signature cards are kind of there to support him, and then he wants to build in a plan to win the game in his aspect cards, particularly for your solo and you don't have other players to drive the game forwards, which actually means that his precon that comes with aerial cards, and the whole aerial archetype, I don't think that archetype, notably in solo play, actually works very well for him. For archetypes, there's a lot of aerial stuff here. I also think he does a lot with allies, particularly because he's got good defending and can afford a lot of aerial allies with the Power of Flight. And the Power of Flight is the #1 card I recommend for him. Due to his signature ally being able to return to hand and pay for them again, even if you had an entire hand full of resource cards, you could just keep playing your signature ally over and over again. That should never be the main plan really, but it is a great kind of backup plan to fall back on. And hey, if the resource cards fall in a good spread, you just keep playing all sorts of awesome stuff. And if they fall too close together, Red Wing is going to zoom around and you're still going to have probably a pretty good turn, even if it's not optimal. And you can even sometimes convert a bunch of resource cards into a bunch of burst damage from Red Wing to finish off the villain, which is kind of fun. So we've got a bunch of aerial stuff recommended. Like Angel, I really like Cannonball here. And of course, I really like team building exercise here as well for all the aerial stuff. I really like war in pool aspect. I think that's really fun because you can see what's on top of the villain's encounter deck. You know whether it's a good time to use it or not. Basically, you take damage equal to the boost icons, and you discard a card from your deck, and the villain takes damage equal to its cost. Really, really fun card. For hero pairings, I absolutely love Scarlet Witch here. It's not actually about like the hex bolts, the tufts and stuff, things like that, which is normally why I pair Scarlet Witch with people. But it's actually because he can look at the top card of the encounter deck all the time, so Scarlet Witch knows what's coming up, which means her events all become a lot more precise. She can even use her Crest or Chaos Control ability to help Falcon as well, which is kind of fun. And the best thing is, if Scarlet Witch gets her Nemesis set out, which you can actually use Aerial Recon to deal Shadow of the Past to Scarlet Witch, which is really funny. That means all boost cards are treated as having +1 boost icon, which then means everything Falcon is doing is like +1 damage or +1 threat removal. Also, shoutouts to Star-Lord. Star-Lord wants to take extra encounter cards. Because of Falcon's ability, he can always see what they are, and Aerial Recon can actually be used to deal him an extra encounter card in the player phase, and then like block one in the villain phase when he doesn't care. So his cards which combo off encounter cards have an extra encounter card to combo off of in that moment, which I really like. Gambit is up next. He has a lot of damage, he has pretty good economy cards, and he can do some crazy stuff a bit like Falcon by using his Alter Ego ability to look at the like encounter deck cards. But his kit has a little bit of anti-synergy, and he's almost too honest in terms of the value of his cards. None of his cards are like, wow, this is mind-blowingly efficient, except maybe his signature ally. But everything's just a bit more fair. You know, he's more hero than superhero, it feels like, in some of the values. There's actually a lot of different deck types I like for him. A lot of like different variations on attacking, in like aggression in particular, but you can also do that in protection. I think because he can defend really well and has money, ally stuff works really nicely as well. And if you can go Alter Ego a lot, there's also quite a lot of shenanigans there. So quite a few effective ways to play him. In terms of cards he likes, I want to shout out Multi-Talented, something that the X-Jet can usually help pay toward, but he can actually like boost the damage from it, which is fun, while also help cover like some threat stuff, maybe help heal him. I just think it's kind of like nice, even if I'm not putting in like every deck for him, I wanted to shout that out. 1x1 is easily his best card, because he can boost the damage of cards by charging them up. 1x1 can end up dealing like 5 damage and 5 damage as a 1-cost attack event. 10 damage for 1 cost. Really, really efficient use of Gambit's charge counters. Melee is also good. Melee is also good in aggression, and I really like Ready for a Fight in protection because it kind of solves the problem that Gambit has, almost like Black Widow, where he has a bunch of stuff he wants to do in Alter Ego, but then some of his stuff, if he goes to Alter Ego, he can't use because he wants to be in hero form in like the villain phase. As for team-ups, I actually don't recommend him with Rogue because their signature allies are so good, there's some weirdness there. Even though the team-up card is really good, you can totally do it. Otherwise, shoutouts to Cyclops, Exploit Weakness, and Royal Flush, which just works so well together. Next up is Gamora. High damage, high forwarding, all from turn 1, basically every turn. Really high tempo character, but suffers from below average survivability. I'd say one of the worst survival characters in the game, but I say that with a pinch of salt, because there aren't many really, really bad ones. Like maybe like Rocket, particularly early game, maybe Star-Lord. But you know, characters are built for solo play, despite popular belief, but despite threat removal values for some of them. So Gamora doesn't necessarily have a lot of issues there. It's also the fact that wanting to play 2 events per turn on average at least means you're not always prioritizing playing something like defensive for the future. Interestingly, despite being a multi-aspect character, I don't think there's that many like archetypes she like really gels with, though there are a few. You know, she can actually deal damage in the villain phase, which makes Change of Fortune nice, and more card draw makes wanting to play like multiple events really nice. She can take stuns from multiple aspects, which makes her sort of stunlock builds, particularly in solo play, really, really effective. And despite being a multi-aspect character, you don't have to take cards from another aspect. You can actually play a Hone Technique deck, focus all on aggression cards, and she can still do incredibly well, particularly when you're triggering like Chase Them Down to be your forwarding card for the turn. And I actually really think Pool is very interesting for her because she can take like attacks and forwarding cards from outside of Pool, whereas Pool typically doesn't like offer much in the way of good attack cards, particularly not like any forwarding cards. And she can take Crisis Averted from Justice to like bypass Crisis icons while otherwise running like some crazy Pool stuff, which is a little bit weird, but I actually kind of like it. In terms of notable cards for her, there are a lot of nice events from different aspects, mainly aggression and justice, that she can really benefit from. You know, at low player counts, you can take Clear the Area, Turn the Tide, Or maybe if you start in Justice, you may want to take Dropkick off Aspect. In multiplayer, you can run like the most crazy aggressive deck, but also have 3 copies of Even the Odds at like 3 and 4 player, and absolutely contribute humongously to threat removal as well, which is a really nice bonus. You know, if I don't feel like playing Justice in multiplayer, but I'm worried about the threat, just build Aggression Gamora and put in 3 copies of Even the Odds and just, you know, use them as you need. It's really, really effective. Oh, and shout out to Lock and Load and or Superpower Training to get Gamora's sword. She has a team-up card with her sister Nebula, who's also a Guardian, and I actually think they have a really good team-up because Nebula, you know, with her techniques, you never know quite what's happening when and what's going to match up where, but Gamora is really precise at putting damage and things in the right place, which matches up really nicely. Also shoutouts to Nightcrawler, who has high defense, which she lacks, but sometimes wants damage or extra threat removal, which she has, and both of them absolutely love Lock and Load. Next up, we have the readying hero, Ghost Spider. Very fun, kind of event-driven character. Wants to play like responses or interrupts to ready up. Once in the villain phase, once in the hero phase. Very high survivability with 3 defense, and because she can ready, potentially defend a second time if she needs to. Doesn't really want to, but if she needs to, she can. The downsides here are that she wants to play an event like in the villain phase before you know what your encounter card is, so you're kind of committing resources before you know what's coming up. Her sort of resource generator, her sort of card draw braces do help with that, but nonetheless, it is a factor. She's also very vulnerable to disruption. If she's stunned or exhausted, it can really shut down her turn. The more you lean into her hero ability, the more vulnerable she can actually be. While famously very good in protection, basic attack builds are very good. Upside the head and Justice actually opened that up to her, but she already had like a couple of good interrupts there. And I actually quite like Pool with her. There's a cheap defense card in Pool she can use to ready. She also really likes lightsabers, you know, for the laser swords for the big attack boost is really nice. But the Mulligan sort of archetype thing I talk about, using Mulligan after like spending different cards, very good for her as she can play lots of different events in the villain phase, and then in the player phase, she hasn't played a card, so she can Mulligan there and sort of rebuild her hand, and it's really nice. Cards I like for her, it's definitely going to be cards like Defiance and Expert Defense and Protection. 0 cost stuff that lets her ready up is really, really good. In Aggression, we have a lot of stuff like Chase Them Down, Skilled Strike, all that kind of thing going on, and like stat boosts like Combat Trading and Aggressive Conditioning. That Pool card I mentioned, the sort of defense one, is called Barely a Scratch. Totally forgot because I don't run it on a lot of heroes. For Ghost Spider, actually Emergency can be a good card, and Face the Past is a nice sort of way to ready up. Her Nemesis minion is easily taken out like in one Ghost Kick, which is pretty handy. Not to mention all the Web Warrior stuff that's really, really good for her. Recommended pairings, it's going to be Storm because she readies up quite a lot, so Thunderstorm does a lot of work. And worst case, if she's stuck with it in the villain phase, because of her high defense, it's generally not too bad. Also, shoutouts to Adam Warlock for the nice stat boost, and he can actually heal something like the Peter Parker basic ally or something, which is also very, very good for Ghost Spider. Ghost Spider is one of the other characters a bit like Gambit and Rogue, where I don't recommend the team up with them. Spider-Man Miles Morales' team up with her young love needs them both to be alter ego, which is so restrictive, and the Ghost Spider ally is really, really good for Miles Morales in his own decks, so yeah, a little bit of an awkward one there, but he can totally do it and win games, but it's just not something I'm recommending here. Groot is up next, our tanky counter mechanic hero. He uses growth counters, which can block damage. He sort of tries to get as many as he can, but he actually kind of doesn't want to block damage with them if he can help it. He wants to either stash them up to reach a high amount, and then his events hit really hard or remove a lot of threat, or he wants to spend them on his upgrades. Using them to block damage is kind of the worst thing you can do. If you can't stop taking damage, you probably just want to try and spend them on your upgrades. If you can stop taking damage, I quite like to try and build up to like 7 to 10 and then spend and kind of float around like 6 to 10 growth counters. But definitely, he wants to go alter ego to build up the growth counters, and his low threat removal is very, very bad at achieving that, particularly in solo play, obviously. He can also lose growth counters like Colossus can, you know, from just random damage, extra attacks even from the villain, etc. Sometimes you can just get a whole bunch of counters wiped out that you couldn't really do much about. And he doesn't have a lot of money to do it. A lot of his own cards are very expensive, which can make it a bit clunky. He's got a few challenges, but he is very tanky. And when you can pull up his sort of big attacks, big forwarding, and like different things, like he can be really, really satisfying. There's a few different builds. For solo, I really actually like Justice. It covers his biggest weakness and lets him go alter ego more. But we now have Ready for a Fight in Protection, which he also really likes because he can deal with attacks better than like Threat, even though he doesn't particularly want to get attacked and lose counters a lot of the time. allies actually solve a lot of his issues as well, with like threat removal and stopping him losing growth counters. But I also think Groot's damage is kind of underrated. Even like Root Stomp is just a really nice event to have that's going to help you build up your growth counters as well and control minions. Shoutouts to Paul as well, with like the triple resources. Quite often a Groot game will happen and I don't take any damage or not much, so like the triple resources are pretty nice. Then you'll see a bunch of cards here that help with going Ultra Ego. Things to help with like threat removal, blocking attacks. Oh, shoutouts to Force Field Generator, one of my favorite cards for Groot. This actually shares the same timing as his hero ability, the Forced Interrupt, when you would take damage. So you can use this instead, because it shares the timing you can choose, to save your growth counters. I absolutely love this. In terms of pairings, he's got a team up card with a Rocket. Rocket also provides a good amount of like damage and threat removal when Groot, has like more defense, which is something Rocket lacks. So it kind of works together, although Groot isn't like especially motivated to defend for other people and lose growth counters, unless he's really built into it in protection. Much like with Colossus, kind of like with Drax, you're going to see Maria Hill and Scarlet Witch here. Doctor Strange is back as well. Handing out toughs or stunning the villain, it's just really, really good. Even confuses all these status cards these characters can easily provide. Help Groot do everything he really wants to do. Oh, shoutouts to Rogue too. Borrowing Groot's cards while he has a lot of growth counters lets Rogue benefit from like those big events as well, which is really, really fun. Okay, Hawkeye is up next, our arrow-focused hero. He has quite a good amount of damage and not a lot else. He is quite bad at thwarting and quite squishy. He has a couple of stuns and Mockingbird who can be returned, but there are definitely like complications there. Like, it's not always smooth, particularly if Steady and or Stalwart is involved on the villain. He also has problems with his arrows that he can only play one a turn unless he exhausts his hero to ready up his bow. But the value on the arrows, while typically like quite nice, isn't high enough to like justify exhausting your hero and wasting like the free damage, unless that's all you really had in hand and like you're in an emergency bad situation, like you have to do it. Typically it's one arrow per turn, and you just hope you get a good spread of them throughout your deck pass, hope your quiver kind of finds one or two, and just make your way through the game as best you can. The archetypes for him, I really like basic attacking with him. I think that's really fun, and like aggression. I actually really like repurpose. Shoutouts to Nelson who first suggested that to me a while ago. But of course, when your threat removal is low and when your survivability is shaky, allies solve both of those things, which makes leadership a really good fit for him. Or in multiplayer, if like the threat removal is largely covered, you do boot camp stuff for him as well. I typically don't recommend like Justice and like 3 or 4 player for him. I think he's like not a great threat remover in general and not super reliable for that, particularly if he wants to put someone into like playing an arrow, which might not remove threat. But I have totally done this in 3 to 4 player with him before, and he can do totally fine. I think I ran a shield build with some even odds, and it's fine, but it's not what I'm recommending. Cards for Hawkeye like increases to his basic attack, as you can imagine, and then flexible allies are also going to be something you see here. But he's quite sort of a self-contained character in that, he wants to shoot arrows, and outside of that, not a lot going on that's like particularly interactable. There's some stuff, but nothing that particularly wowed me to include here. Again, he's got a weakness of threat removal, and he doesn't want to take damage too much because he's, pretty squishy. So you're going to see Doctor Strange, you're going to see Maria Hill. I could have put Scarlet Witch here, but I put Captain America, and I put Spider-Woman, who I think are quite good at covering those bases, and actually Nightcrawler as well, a nice kind of defensive hero to help Hawkeye shoot his arrows from safety. Next up, we have Hercules, the unreleased character. I should put that on here, he's unreleased. This is all speculative. Hercules is our side quest bruiser. He wants to do all these different labors to power up his events and things, and to get various different like keywords and health benefits. And it's kind of interesting how it's all going to work. So this is what I would kind of have prepared if I'd done a proper deep dive for him. I'm not doing this anymore, but he has a really small hero hand size, weak at the beginning of the game, but late game it looks like he's going to get very, very strong. Reminds me of Ironheart in many ways, but Ironheart can sort of progressively gain her progress counters, pun not intended, whereas Hercules with his labors has to introduce a large and sudden problem, and at the beginning of the game might not be very well equipped to deal with some of them, which is kind of the tricky challenge. So a lot of the things I'm predicting here, speculating that are going to be good for him, are things that help him deal with his labors very quickly, which typically is going to be increasing his basic attack, which he can use to remove threat from the side scheme because it will have assault when his labor brings it out, or hit the minion because damage is good against minions. Surprise! If you made it this far in the video and didn't know that, my apologies. Because only Hercules can like complete his labors, like your allies can't even help you, other players can't help you. A lot of stuff is really focused here on like powering up the hero. Things like you got this, teamwork even, things like that. I think are going to be really helpful for Hercules in like leadership. I think it could be very helpful for Hercules in leadership. I actually thought Sidekick was interesting. Obviously, the character isn't out yet. I have yet to explore it. But one of the labors brings in your signature ally for you, so you can then just attach the upgrade, which I thought might be a pretty fun, easy way to get that going. Notable cards for him, again, it's a lot of readying. It's a lot of things for his basic attack. I think aggression is clearly going to suit him very well. I think a lot of these cards just synergize well. He has a lot of physical resources, it looks like so far. So those cards are all going to work pretty nicely. But I didn't include Yarnborn here because he has to actually attack his labor minion from the defeat the Hydra labor. And the damage from Yarnborn responds to attacks, but is not an attack. I also think because his Ultra Ego hand size is much bigger than his hero hand size, kind of like She-Hulk, kind of like Psylocke, he's going to want to go Ultra Ego a lot. But his seeming lack of threat removal makes ready for a fight or ways to like, confuse the villain pretty handy. For a team up card, there's Thor, so Thor is kind of like mentioned here. I actually think Storm is going to be really useful because although characters cannot help with his labors, it has to be Hercules, Storm can boost the stats of Hercules to kind of indirectly then help with the labors. Even the -1 attack from Blizzard can be useful here. Storm's also good at covering the early game, which looks to be a big weakness for Hercules as well. Next up, we have Hulk, and there's a lot I could say about Hulk, but basically, he is very punchy, he's good at hitting things, and he is incredibly tanky with 18 starting hit points and 3 defense. But he has arguably like the worst threat removal in the game, competing with the likes of Spider-Man, Peter Parker that we talked about to begin with. His hand size is low, his cards are expensive, his own hero ability is out to hurt him, he has very poor economy, though he does have like 2 good resource cards. They often come up at like the wrong time and like just awkward with his hand. It's just Hulk has some challenges, but he can do a lot of damage and he can be very tanky and things can come together sometimes in a fortunate way. And Hulk with a modern card pool with a good deck build played well can actually do some stuff. He's way better than his reputation suggests, but I still think he's among the most challenged heroes, if that makes sense. But you can have fun, and you can do that with a fairest amount of archetypes. You can actually have quite a few here that I quite like for him. Punching Bag makes him like get attacked. You can use that health quite well, and even his Ultra Ego like recovery. Just this obviously covers his big weakness, but like if you're in multiplayer, just make somebody else do it. Do not put Hulk in Justice. You can do it, but I'm not recommending it. And I actually really like allies for him as well as things like Ready for a Fight. I actually think Change of Fortune can go well. He can get Retaliate, things like that. There's actually a few different interesting possibilities you have for Hulk, many of which have a good amount of physical resources, or you can even just purposefully lean away for that and do something like Moongirl Recursion, which is just very, very sort of a raw power, but he's got the Genius trait, so he can make it work. Talking about notable cards for him, a lot of physical resource stuff here, like the new Death Cry, like the new Avenge Me card is going to be like, it's basically I'm listing it for all the Avengers. It's coming with Hercules. Your ally gets defeated, you draw 2 cards, you must be an Avenger to play it. It's physical resource. Hulk desperately needs card draw, so that's going to be really very, very good. Paul has like readying, which wants physicals with stick-to-itiveness, which is handy. If your triple resource can pay for laser swords, Hulk is going to have a really good time. And of course, we've got limitless stamina and death focus for him in basic, which I consider essential. Recommended pairings, we're going to see Captain Marvel yet again here for that Ultra Ego card draw, but that one card can absolutely make or break Hulk's hands, and that just makes such an impact. Otherwise, we're going to shout out Cyclops, Storm, a lot of like the common support ones, but shout outs to Vision and Rogue and even Cable to help remove some threat, which is what Hulk struggles with the most. Hulkling is up next. He's not released yet, again, delayed in the UK, so this is a bit speculative, but a lot of what I predicted and wrote on here, honestly, like a couple of months ago, has turned out to be true. It seems a lot of people like what I've heard, just different chatter, so that's a good sign. Hulkling is a shape-shifting event hero. He wants to play at least like one event per turn. It's really kind of fascinating how he works. He's got all these different shapeshift upgrades, and depending which one you go for turn 1, you could just stick with that one, and it could completely shape your entire game. And if you had gone for a different upgrade and stuck with that, your whole game would look completely different. You might want to bring a completely different deck for it, or you can play a build which wants to kind of jump between different shapeshift forms. But he has basically good everything, especially if he's in like the right shapeshift form for it. He's a good all-rounder, and that means he doesn't have a lot of weaknesses. I think he's a little bit of a slow turn 1. He wants to play one of those shapeshift upgrades, but those shapeshift upgrades are also double resources, which can help him pay for more stuff in general throughout the game. In terms of archetypes, anything that's going to have like cheap events or just like really like practical events you're going to really want to play, I think go really well for him. He can get aerial from turn 1 potentially, so you can do aerial stuff. And Wiccan, his signature ally, looks to be a little bit exceptional, so that's also nice to have for leadership builds. He actually has some potential to deal damage in the villain phase as well, so shoutouts to Change of Fortune, and he can get pretty nice stats, so shoutouts to like Repurpose and Readying. As long as events are involved, it kind of feels like Hulkling can do anything he wants. Cards he like, you can see a lot of events here, particularly like convenient ones, particularly like cheap ones that he can like flexibly use around stuff. I want to say I predicted Assess the Situation before we knew it was in his precon. I think that's going to be really nice. He has quite a few superpowers, so Death Focus and even Hope Summers, the ally, is quite a nice shout here. And of course he likes to go Ultra Ego, so you're going to see things here like Sonic Rifle, just to make that happen, so you can get that double resource from your Shapeshift card that you can bring into hand. And yeah, Hulkling's going to do well with quite a variety of cards anyway. Moving on to his recommended pairings, I'm starting with Cable. Normally I have Cable last in all these tables and I don't talk about him. He's just there for so many heroes. He's just obviously good with everyone. But here with Hulkling, I thought it really stood out. Being able to guarantee alien physiology turn 1, like round 1 with build support, is incredibly good. It's like 2 extra resources per turn, guaranteed from turn 1. It's hard to argue with that. Body Slide is really good. And yeah, I just think that works incredibly well. You're going to see a few usual suspects here. You're going to see Captain Marvel. Gamora is quite a hero that I think is actually a really good pairing in a lot of multiplayer groups. But I want to shout out Nick Fury, because Hulkling and Nick Fury, if Hulkling takes the kind of infiltration, disguise, shapeshift form, both are characters that will be schemed against instead of attacked, which in certain scenarios can be incredibly good. And in scenarios where it's not good, Hulkling can maybe go into like winged form, which is going to get him extra threat removal to help Nick, but won't have to be schemed against, which is kind of nice. So you can be really flexible with it and make it work that way. Both heroes also start with 3 traits in hero form. If you wanted to go for strength and diversity, it's very good here. Next up is Iceman, who has really high survivability and the Frostbite's being able to reduce an enemy's scheme, even, helping against steady or stalwart, as does his Frozen Solid upgrade. That's kind of nice, but he is quite low threat removal. He has some like kind of more expensive stuff, a little clunky stuff, He's got some downsides to work around, but there are various ways to do it. He really, in particular, likes readying. So we're talking like X-Men builds with Utopia are going to be really good in general. There's also a lot of stuff in protection to help ready him. There are also cards in protection to help ready him, which is really nice. And of course, Justice can help to shore up his low threat removal. Looking at some notable cards for him, Team Building Exercise goes without saying. I think it was reprinted with him. But Death Focus, X-Gene, there's just a lot of good resource generators for him. The problem is, sometimes you can just feel like you're spending like a couple of turns just playing resource generators, and the game can kind of be getting away from you, but they're such high value, and his cards are so expensive, it can be hard not to. So my advice would be, obviously, play the resource generators, but if you have a couple out already, maybe pass on one. Hopefully you've got another copy of Team Building Exercise coming up, and get the board under control, make some progress, make an impact. Shoutouts to the Domino ally to put a card back on top of your deck, an ice card for Cryokinetic Perception to ready you up. Mirage is really good for him since he can lower the stats of the villain. Mirage can stun them with ease, and as an X-Men, it's probably going to trigger Utopia, maybe even be cheaper from Uncanny X-Men, and it's going to be really good. To talk about recommended pairings, we're going to start with Cyclops. I talked about it earlier in Cyclops' section, so I'm not going to go on too long here about it. You're going to start to see some sort of combos talked about from one character come up again later on. Cyclops has threat removal. He has some nice minion damage. He likes upgrades like Frostbite, which Iceman provides, and that's pretty good. The only downside is both want Utopia, but the cool kind of thing is that Cyclops can have it, and he can kind of use it to ready up Iceman. It can actually work out, so not too bad, but it's something to keep in mind. Next up, we have Iron Man, who is a tech-focused build hero, wants to play loads of tech. He's a hero hand size of 1 with no tech, but with tech he can have a huge hero hand size and dominate the game. So if you've only got the Corsair, you're going to struggle, but if you have all the tech cards from future expansions and things, he's an absolute powerhouse in Justice and especially Protection. Once he's set up, his damage per turn is absolutely absurd. His thwarting, he doesn't have any threat removal events, so you're kind of subject to what you can do, but you can basically do 4 every turn once Arc Reactor is down, which is at least pretty handy. It's very consistent. The problem is that slow start, we start with 1 hero hand size. Sometimes you have to be Ultra Ego for multiple turns. In a modern deck, with all the cards built well, usually you can flip down turn 2, no problem, but it's not like that for everyone with every size card collection, so definitely worth mentioning. And in solo play, even that first turn stuck in Ultra Ego can be a big deal, particularly against, I don't know, Rhino. So this core set hero is not this core set hero is not good as a matchup against that core set villain in solo play. Like, it's just very, very bad. Deck builds are going to focus on things to keep the threat from going out of control when you're building up in like solo play, and things with a lot of tech. Just tech does really well for him. That's everything he wants. And I don't think there's a lot else to say. You can do different variations on his decks, which will make a big impact, but he's always just hunting for tech, and then playing your upgrades and your hero attacks are kind of going to carry the game over the finish line. Good cards for him are Face the Past. He's got the genius stuff like Ingenuity, Moon Girl. And like I said about like the archetypes, a lot of the Justice cards here too, they're just trying to stop the threat from going over while you can build. And then Protection is full of tech, and that's exactly what he wants. Also, shout out to Spider Bite, who's an auto-include in all my Protection decks for him now. He's a fun team-up card with War Machine, but I really like him with Cable. Getting that guaranteed superpowered training for like a really early game arc reactor really helps Iron Man just not have a bad start. And a bit like Maria Hill, if Iron Man has a good start, you generally win the game. Jubilee as well can get Arc Reactor on the first round with Shopping Spree, which should almost certainly be used for him. It's very, 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 very good. So that's pretty nice to see. Captain Marvel can draw him like extra cards to put more tech down faster at the start of the game, which is generally what we're aiming for here. Ironheart is a very similar character to Iron Man in terms of sort of a hero in a big metal suit that wants to build up, starts slow, but has a very powerful late game. I would say Ironheart doesn't necessarily build up as fast as Iron Man, actually, but she can kind of contribute and play the game while she's building, and I think her late game is somehow even more insane than Iron Man's late game, which is very, 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 very good. So yeah, these characters are very similar in a way, but very different, because she doesn't want to play tech. She doesn't mind playing tech, but she wants to gain progress counters to level up, kind of like Hercules wants to, defeat those labors. Early game Ironheart, I think one of the weakest characters in the game. As soon as you hit version 2, everything changes. Ironheart version 3, probably among the strongest characters in the game, if we were to measure it in that way. Shuri wants to go Ultra Ego a lot to get some progress counters going more consistently, and aside from a slow start, she also starts with a low threat, which is also something to keep in mind. As for suggested archetypes, anything that deals with mental resources is going to be especially good for her. Anything that helps with readying too can be really good once she levels up and has really high forwarding. Generally, card draw is the best thing for her, so you can find more of her own cards, which is how you get progress counters, and then you can level up faster, and as soon as you hit version 3, the game will largely take care of itself as you play her incredibly powered up hero cards, and the villain generally has a very bad time. Cards I like for her, there's going to be a lot of mental resources here, a lot of things that let you go Ultra Ego. Beast is here as well because her signature resource card is among the most powerful in the entire game. Shoutouts to Grant Ward here too, who can really help her cover the threat removal in the early game, but also, he needs mental resources sometimes, which she should have in abundance. She has the most mental resources of any character in Marvel Champions currently. In terms of pairings, I'm going to put Cable up here again. It's just too good. Him helping her set up is so impactful. It just completely changes the game. Otherwise, we're going to see a lot of similar stuff here to Iron Man. Characters that can help cover the early game, or characters that interact with and help her kind of progress and build up faster. Next up is Jubilee, who's a very interesting kind of multi-resource event hero, wants to spend different types of resources on the same events to get different benefits. Quite a rich character. She has a resource on her hero card. She has 3 resources in her signature identity-specific 15 hero cards. Her damage and threat removal can be high, but it might depend on, what upgrade you go for first, often from Shopping Spree. But Shopping Spree is very slow, particularly in solo play, and if you're including cards purposefully to try and increase the speed. But you probably don't want those cards otherwise. That's a little bit weird, but it's fine. She's a lot of status cards, but that is quite a downside when it comes to Stadium Stalwart, because she's otherwise a very, very squishy character. When it comes to suggested archetypes, I really mostly just love aggression and justice. Anything heavily event-oriented, I think, can do really, really well and be really, really fun. She can do stuff in leadership, she can do stuff in protection, particularly because multi-talented is a basic card, which is attack and fort traded. It's really, really good for her, basically made for her, although it can be good elsewhere, obviously. But yeah, Hone Technique aggression is just incredibly fun, and she can remove immense amounts of threat in multiplayer if she's built right. Notable cards for her, you're going to see a lot of events here. Generally, I think 2-cost events like attacks and forwarding are really good for her. Her upgrades do more based on how expensive the card is, how many different resource types you paid for it. But sometimes they're a bit unwieldy and, she wants to do different things. So, some of the 3-cost ones, I feel like I'm kind of forcing myself to take, and I'd rather have, one less benefit for my upgrade to have a more desirable event. So do that with caution. With that said, absolutely love using like full body charge with her just for like the hilarity of it, but I haven't quite recommended it here, but it is fun, so I'm not saying not to do it, I just can't recommend it as easily in good conscience. Of course, shoutouts to multi-talented. I really like Deadpool as a wild resource and also a flexible ally, whichever way you want to use him. That's really nice. And cool for backup because her signature ally is so expensive and she has so much threat removal. It's a really nice little combo there. For recommended heroes, we have Wolverine with the team-up card, but I want to talk about Storm. When Storm changes to the Hurricane weather, because Hurricane, that weather environment is kind of a support card, that can actually remove threat from Shopping Spree, instantly defeating it. And Shopping Spree can get either Storm's Cape or Storm's Crown, which are super high value. Jubilee's Shopping Spree can really set Storm up to be an absolute powerhouse, even more than she already is. Basically, all the other characters here really like Shopping Spree or have some kind of fun interaction with it. And then there's She-Hulk, who just like stuns, and Jubilee has a lot of them. Magik is up next. She can see the top card of her deck and play it for cheap. It means she's very rich, especially in combination with the other Mystic toys like Sorcerer Supreme. Like she can burn through her deck with like Spiritual Meditation, find all these kind of good cards, extra resource cards, and so on. Her threat removal is like probably like the biggest weakness I could speak of, but I wouldn't say it's like bad. It's just not as good as everything else. She also doesn't particularly have like good damage to finish off the villain, but she has so much money she can play a lot that she often can finish the villain with no problems. There's a lot of archetypes that kind of work well for her. She has a lot of money to make things happen. She's good with allies, she's good with events, she's good at actually basic attacking actually with her Soul Sword. I really enjoy that. But much like in the way of Domino, I really, really like the Hulk ally. She's one of my big recommendations. Because you can just see the top of your deck, it's not just swapping a card, you can see it. Hulk is always basically going to be safe and doing insanely huge damage as a very cheap ally. Generally here, I like anything that changes the top card of your deck. That can be card draw, but it can even be stuff that says just, search for this, shuffle your deck, shuffle this card you already had into your deck, things like that. Because whatever's on top of your deck, if it's not desirable to play, any of these ways to change what's on top, drawing or shuffling, anything like that, can set you up with a different option. You roll the dice, hope you find something better on top of the deck to play that turn with that discount. Also, Wolfsbane and Cosmo and Legion should never miss. You should always get exactly what you want, which is a very good kind of bonus for them as well. Recommended pairings, we've got Captain Marvel here, just for that card draw ability, changes what's on top of the deck, so now you have a different option. For recommended pairings, again, it's Captain Marvel. She's just got that really easy guaranteed alter ego, like card draw ability. If you have card draw for Magik, not only are her cards good, so card draw is just good, but it's a new option on top of the deck, which is really valuable. You don't want a bad card or a resource card stuck on top of it. You might also want to find the right resource type for your upgrades and your events to benefit from. And Captain Marvel just helps with that more than most characters, I'm afraid to say. I don't want to keep saying her, but it's a really, 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 really good ability. And that kind of convenient card draw for other players isn't really found elsewhere in the same way. Cyclops comes a little close, but it's just not the same. On to another X-Men, and it's the fearsome Magneto. This guy's rich, he's got his own resource cards, but his hero ability discards until you draw a magnetic card. Effectively, he has 6 cards when he starts in hero form, and 7 when he flips down after starting in alter ego, which is really, 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 really good, obviously. Some of his cards are sort of conditional, they're not always going to be getting full value, but he has the money to kind of account for that anyway, and sometimes they are getting full value, and it's very, very good. With his cape and his tendency to like Utopia, he can have a lot of raiding as well. However, his cards are quite expensive in addition to being situational, which definitely can, offer slight challenges in how you play your hand sometimes. The biggest downside, though, is that he likes to discard from his own deck, and he doesn't have quantum magic quite like Adam Warlock does, something like that. So aspect synergies are just especially inconsistent here. So generally, you want to aim for something broad, and like the cards you do put in, even if they combo with this cool upgrade, you might discard it. So you want to make sure those cards you put in have good value when played raw, as well as once you maybe hopefully find that upgrade, not discard it and get it into play. For this purpose, I really like boot camp decks. Like my X-Men allies are going to be good even if I don't have boot camp in play, even if I discard it. But if I get boot camp in play, which I can probably afford because Magneto's rich, then all my X-Men allies are going to be happy. And even if I discard a few, I'm probably going to get a few allies for every deck pass in my hand to actually benefit from it. Also really like stat boost for Magneto because of his readying, like basic attack, basic 4. I think all of that's really fun for him and good. So there's a lot of actual options he kind of has, but he does end up playing a majority of like his own cards because he'll discard a bunch of aspect stuff, and he's got cards which like interact with like generate resources for magnetic cards and stuff. So yeah, kind of a weird character to like talk about archetypes and cards for. Like a lot of these cards you're going to see on the notable cards are just like good all the time anyway. However, I do like minion summoning for him when it's efficient, because Wrapped in Metal needs a minion. And once that's done, his Magnetic Missile card is actually quite efficient. I actually quite like it. There's also a few cards here that just help you get the right card at the right time. In terms of recommended pairings, I absolutely love him with Tigra. If you can wrap minions in metal that she has engaged with her, she's just basically got permanent extra card draw and like other benefits and stuff throughout the game, because they just won't be doing anything. And it's hard to say anything more of that or speak about other characters. But shoutouts to Rogue, with Superpower Adaptation, can find the situational Magneto events at the perfect time when otherwise they might miss value, such as his forwarding card, which removes an attachment. What if an attachment turns up, it's not in hand? Rogue can go and find it. But yeah, it's a lot of benefits from different X-Men and mutant characters here, actually, which is kind of nice to see. Next up is Maria Hill, and we're only at 64 out of 150 pages. Like the last 14, 12 or so pages aren't heroes, but I'm going to probably speed up even more, I'm afraid to say, guys, but the whole document is there whenever you want it in the description to read everything. Maria Hill, shield support hero, wants to build up, but once she's built up, she is unstoppable. And honestly, early game isn't that bad. Like, you can get the Iliad out turn 1 and remove like a bunch of threat, deal a bunch of damage where you need. Pericles absolutely buys you a ton of time and makes you kind of invincible and unable to lose in that way to, quite a big degree. So Maria Hill, some weaknesses in the early game, but actually also not really. Getting a good turn 1 is like the most important thing. And if you deck build correctly, highly recommend like extra resources, meditation, that kind of thing. Prioritize the right cards, namely like the Iliad or Pericles. Try not to spend your Shield Director card. And quite often you can actually play like support stuff, then use the resource for that to also play a 6 cost on the same turn 1 turn, and that'll help protect you from caught off guard. So there's a lot of stuff that can happen here, but if you get that good turn 1, you are completely fine, and you kind of just watch the game progress, turning the cards as you need until you have achieved ultimate victory. She's kind of like the ultimate build hero, plays very weirdly, very differently, kind of interesting in that way. Because she really wants shield supports, we're going to look at the archetypes here and basically see shield supports. Even if you take an archetype, which I haven't called shield supports, you're probably still going to want a lot of shield supports here. So it is what it is. But I absolutely love Sidekick for Nick Fury. You can actually use the Cersei to like play him kind of like for cheap, cheat him into play. And even in pool, although it has a weaker late game because you can take less shield cards, the triple resources are absolutely phenomenal for setting up what you can take in terms of shield supports from other aspects in Basic really quickly. In terms of notable cards, you're just going to see a ton of my favorite shield cards and a few like resource options. Absolutely love meditation for her. Love like the pool resources, like I said. And yeah, just field agent, absolutely like essential, I would say, almost to any of her builds. I mean, you can use her without it. You can have good decks without it. But 1 cost for 3 counters to move around is so good. Looking at recommended pairings, I almost didn't put Nick Fury here because the signature allies they have with each other are so good that it makes me not want to play them together. But actually, the team-up card is really good and quite a good consolation prize for like losing access to playing the signature ally versions of them. Cable is here as well, just because Maria Hill is a build hero. She really wants to build, and no one's better at helping people build than Cable. Puts on his like worker hat, gets his hammer, gets some, he's just a good builder. And getting Shield Director on the first turn, or even like a support shield card, are just so good. You can even like call for backup turn 1, so Maria can have the Nick Fury signature ally turn 1 and like round 1 as well, potentially. Like, it's still not a bad option either. There's so many like incredibly good options competing with each other. Cable is just unfathomably good, but also Captain Marvel I think is unfathomably good here as well. I really love that extra 1 card draw can completely change Maria Hill's turn 1, and then Maria Hill can ready up Captain Marvel's Alpha Flight Station. So yeah, I didn't speed up talking about this hero that much here actually, guys, but there's just a lot to talk about here that's really impactful. And of course, giving out tufts for the Pericles, Drax, Colossus, Groot, even like Hawkeye, there's a lot of stuff going on here. Miss Marvel is an event-boosting hero. Curiously, she's the only hero who's kind of dependent on drawing the right events, but also kind of a slower start hero that wants to build up several things on the board to reach a significant level of power. Those are both kind of like downsides, but she can boost up events in really spectacular ways, particularly things that hit multiple targets, multiple schemes, or multiple enemies. And she can exhaust to bring an event back to hand after playing it, which has a lot of combo potential, which I really like. She's very much like Jubilee. I really prefer aggression and justice. There are things you can do in the other aspects, but they're a little bit more niche, things I'm not so likely to recommend here. And I personally like aggression and justice, and this is my video, this is what I'm suggesting, so this is what we've got. But she can definitely do other things as well. Like Jubilee, she can also actually really enjoy multi-talented to trigger both embiggen and shrink. Don't ask me how that works, I think that's really funny. She gets bigger and smaller at the same time. But then we've got like 1x1 and melee that, embiggen can boost multiple instances of damage for, then 3 steps ahead, even the odds, multitasking, even Overwatch, things like this, that shrink can end up removing multiple instances of extra threat for. I think that's all really, really good. In terms of recommended pairings, it's a bit weird for her. Obviously, she would appreciate Captain Marvel's card draw, but I think she likes early game coverage, so I put Angel on here, and he's got a flexible output. So Miss Marvel might do a little bit of everything, kind of, until she gets, like, let's say, embiggen out, then her attacks are especially good. Angel's events can sometimes, like, remove threat or deal damage depending on his form, and he can just prioritize playing them in the other form once Miss Marvel is, like, really ready to lean into what she's specialized in and got everything ready for that. Next up, we have Nebula, who I call a delayed event hero. So she has techniques which she plays, then at the start of her turn, when she's a hero, they will trigger. So you play them one turn, and the next turn you start in hero form, they go off. They're kind of like playing an event that doesn't happen until the future, even if they are upgrades, which is why I phrase it that way. It does have some passive boosts, which I think are underrated and quite nice. But because you play these techniques, and then they kind of trigger later for their big effect, it's kind of inconsistent. You don't know what's coming up in the future to play around. You just kind of have to hope there's some like good place to put whatever is going to happen in the future, which is a big downside, but there's a lot of fun stuff she can do, and I really enjoy her. In terms of what she can do in the archetypes, nothing really interacts with the techniques too much. There are some that give like overkill on attacks, so you can kind of like lean into that and excess damage builds. But generally, she just likes good, solid builds, even allies that are like really steady, things that can kind of support her around whatever her techniques are going to do, hopefully the right thing, but you never know what your encounter card is, unless you use wide stance to set that up in like solo play. But, she's only got 2 copies of that. It's a whole thing, but she can kind of do a little bit of everything. Because playing a technique in Alter Ego kind of refunds itself, you can kind of get away with like playing her techniques and then doing a whole kind of involved aspect build, maybe like Guardians of the Galaxy and Leadership. I really like using that support card and like leaning into that. And also shoutouts to Ready for a Fight. If you want to get quicker tempo from your techniques, have them trigger sooner than later. You can build into it as an archetype. It's also a notable card for her. Since she always wants to go Alter Ego, a lot of like threat removal and confuse stuff is really nice here as well as of course the Guardian allies that are trait locked are very good, namely Gamora and Rocket, but since she doesn't have a ton of like instant villain damage, I think Drax as a good source of villain damage is actually kind of efficient here as well to end games. For recommended pairings, we've got Gamora here, the team up card. I think Gamora's precision sort of stuff works well to clean up after Nebula, whatever her technique does at that moment, as we talked about earlier for Gamora. Otherwise, I'll shout out Cyclops. The Field Commander upgrade means he always goes first. Lethal Intent is an event you often want to use in multiplayer on somebody else's turn before your turn. Cyclops can always go before your turn. It works out beautifully. Moving on, we have Nick Fury, the stealthy attack boosting hero. Much like Gambit, he can boost up the damage of attacks, but it can also be basic attacks, which is interesting. He has quite a bit of control with his like preparations. He can cancel treacheries and so on. But he also makes the villain scheme against him sometimes to build up his attack boosting, which can be very dangerous, particularly in solo play. And depending on how much threat he has taken, which is his unique mechanic, he can have a weaker turn or a stronger turn. Sometimes you might want a stronger turn, but you just spent all your threat the previous turn, that kind of thing. But you don't want to just hold on to it and build it up too much, because your obligation can sometimes remove it. So there's definitely a few things to juggle there. Quite a complicated hero, but very enjoyable for me. Probably more enjoyable in multiplayer than solo because of the his tendency to make the villain scheme. But he does have safety nets to help him with that. For archetypes, because he can boost basic attack or events, there's a lot of event kind of stuff going on here. Also some readying stuff. I really like all of this. I love him with Repurpose. I love him with Sidekick and Leadership. But in Aggression, I love multi-target attacks. You can do firepower builds. You can do stuff just like 1x1, which is one of my favorite cards. You can even, with the help of his flying car, do the most incredible dive bomb mega damage combos, which is just really fun. Looking at good cards for him, absolutely love Gemma Simmons and Leo Fitz, particularly Leo Fitz. Anything to find his flying car faster, I think it's his best card. Also build support for that purpose right here as well. I think that's really, really good. Shoutouts to like those multi-attack cards like 1x1 and melee, and even like dive bomb if you want in Aggression. Justice got that threat removal. A lot of things to try and keep the game under control so the threat doesn't go over even though you make the villain scheme. Something to keep in mind is that any card in the encounter deck which says attack is also basically now a copy of Advance, as well as a copy of Advance, so you should be prepared for the villain to scheme additional times. However, because of Spray Fire, that hits multiple targets, and also he can actually just absorb minions for a turn or two sometimes to generate threat from them scheming against him when he's in stealth form. Minion summoning is actually kind of good for him sometimes. It's actually quite like Angela for him. I quite like Squared Off. The team ups with Maria Hill with the team up card that we talked about in her section. Actually also like Captain America with Shield. But I don't know if there's one like team up that I consider like extraordinarily good for him. I do like that Hulkling can also make the villain scheme, and they can kind of use that against certain villains. But Nick's kind of got his own kind of threat-oriented game plan, and as long as nothing's interrupting that, I don't think he minds too much who he's paired with. Someone generally who can help him with extra threat removal when he needs it. Oh, and of course Cable. Looking at Nightcrawler, he is a hero that I haven't necessarily gelled with as much as I hoped to. He was my most anticipated X-Men hero. But making this whole document here, he fills a really nice role in Marvel Champions that not many other characters do. And such a dedicated defensive character. There are characters that can defend multiple times, but he can do it every turn with basically no downside. And if there is a downside, it was possibly more efficient for him to just defend again anyway, because it's so good. He can get up to 4 basic defense, which I really like. So when we look at hero pairings, we're going to see heroes that need defense. Nightcrawler is there for them, and I actually really like that and appreciate that. I do think he has low damage. Now, I've heard it argued that, yeah, he does have a lot of damage, but for me, I find it so awkward that I don't think it's practical damage. The main issue is you need more bamps than you typically have on average. With that said, there's quite a lot we can do here with the archetypes. Because he's so defensive, he's a really good place for strong allies, because, he won't be forced to block with them anytime soon. So you can play them and get really nice long-term benefits. I really like him with like X-Men, like attack training. You can even do stuff with like a firepower now, exhaust his weapons, get a lot of damage out that way too. Also, shoutouts to leadership. I put 2+ attack swarm here, only because I think he lacks a bit for damage. So if I'm building a swarm deck, I'm actually prioritizing cheap allies that also have a good attack stat for him, which is a bit different to my normal kind of mixed thing I recommend. But in solo play, I think he really benefits from that. And of course, protection decks. He's Mr. Defense. They kind of like don't need an introduction, honestly. He can actually kind of hybrid a lot of these like deck types together and still be very effective, which is a really fun kind of thing to see. Notable cards for him are Lock and Load to find his weapons quicker, same for superpowered training. I actually really like Colossus and Deadpool to like offer damage for him, with Deadpool like consistent fording too, just really flexible. I kind of think Deadpool's like an underrated ally. He's just useful. And I think I first saw this from Daring Lime actually. I really like Last Stand for Nightcrawler, because he doesn't need to block with those allies, so getting extra damage out of them when you need it is a really nice touch. And it's a nice cheap card that he can play easily, which he can afford around, affording bamps, which can be a little bit of a challenge. When you look at the pairings that he likes, you're going to see a pattern. They want help with defense, that's what he provides, and they provide damage and often a little extra threat removal, which is what he particularly wants. And it works beautifully. And I put so many pairings here because this is really where I feel like Nightcrawler shines the most. With the right pairing, he's kind of the support, the defense, the tank, and he can really enable other characters to shine while shining at what he does best. Wow, am I bad at going fast? We're almost halfway through the document, but we're over halfway through the heroes. We have Nova, an event-driven sequencing hero. Lots and lots of money, really crazy combos. I think Unleash Nova Force is the best comeback card in Marvel Champions. It can completely turn a game around. But he does only have one printed fort and attack. It's dependent on drawn events. So if you get a bad hand, he can be in a bit of trouble. But there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with him. Like, he really likes bringing in players' side schemes, and he can win games without even really getting much use out of Unleash Nova Force. So there's different approaches to Nova which can work well, which is one of the most fun things about deck building for him. There's a lot of archetypes and things here. He does really well with events, though. He likes to pay for them and then get like different combos off of them. But he's also totally fun with allies. He can like to boost his basic stats too, because he can ready up with Unleash Nova Force. Shoutouts to Unleash Nova Force with Repurpose, in multiplayer especially. I think that's just really, really good. Cards I like for him include the Locust, which is a champion-specific ally, which can find an event for you, which just helps him be even more consistent. I love the Falcon champion ally. Don't think that one gets a lot of love, but by readying Nova, he can kind of get the resource back for that, so it's kind of just a little extra bonus. I think that's really kind of a nice little combo. But really, aerial stuff, just cheap events are really nice for Unleash Nova Force combos to keep them flowing. But he can afford big events too. There isn't a lot he can't do really, except have like huge meaty like basic attacks or forts. There will always be a little bit on the lower side, unless you have laser swords and pool, which is a whole thing he can do as well. Which is safe to say, Nova is a pretty versatile hero. Some of my favorite pairings for Nova include characters like Thor or Tigra, characters that summon minions that can set up big Unleash Nova Force combos. Tigra might not want the minions defeated, but on the flip side, she might have multiple that he can do this big chain reaction of super value on, which is always kind of nice. I actually especially love Nova with Spider-Man Peter Parker. I've played this combo several times because it's just that good. I've come back to it. Spider-Man provides defense, and he has villain damage. Nova doesn't have a lot of villain damage, but he has good threat removal and good minion damage. Oh, shoutouts to Rogue as well. Nova is aerial, which means Rogue gets extra benefits from her events when she is touched on Nova, and she can use Superpower Adaptation to get Nova Force to play it for Nova, so she gets even more use of it for a deck cycle, which is very good. Next up is Phoenix, our Psionic Unleashing hero. She starts with 3 basic fort, and a lot of her events are a little bit rubbish, let's be honest. Some of them are fine, but some of them not so good. But once she unleashes, she goes from 3 fort to 1 fort, but 1 attack to 3 attack. And then her events are basically a lot better. Some of them are very, very good. So you fort, you prepare, and then you unleash and you end the game. It's quite a common sort of flow of play, but you can do it in different ways. Some people don't unleash until like the very last turn of the game. Other people are trying to unleash as fast as possible. There's just quite a lot of decks that work really, really well for her. She can do all the X-Men stuff really well. There's Psionic decks, and she has power counters, which are a wild resource, so really good for something like Hone Technique. You can do all sorts of things with them, and she can even repurpose because she's got big stats, whether it's forwarding or later damage. She can kind of lean into like more X-Men ally stuff, or she can go full Power of the Mind Psionic events, but there's actually quite a lot of Psionic allies now. We've got like Legion, White Queen, as well as Professor X. I feel like I'm forgetting a basic one too here. There's a whole bunch of them in leadership though, so there's a lot of fun stuff that goes on with Phoenix. The cards we can look at for her, there's a lot of Psionic stuff. We've got Power of the Mind, Scimitar, my favorite, and basically any character I really like to use Scimitar on. I'll talk about that more with Psylocke, but I think it's a bit of a trap, even though she comes with it. I don't necessarily think it's worth the effort and the downsides. But for Phoenix, I absolutely love it. She's the best player in the game of Stepford Cuckoos because of Power of the Mind and team building exercise, and you have to be an X-Men, which she is, so it all comes together beautifully. Team building exercise, great for Psionic cards, great for X-Men cards. Those wild resources on her sort of power counters, really good for Magik or Sunfire. Looking at multiplayer, there's Cyclops, who she obviously has a team-up card with, and Storm, they have a team-up card. These are all a great team, and a great team in free play as well. It just works well. I also really like Psylocke with her. They can both have free forwarding turn 1, or Psylocke can go into her sort of attacking with the katanas and cover a lot of damage here too. You know, she doesn't have a ton of late game damage, but guess what? Unleashed Phoenix can. And Psylocke actually has pretty good minion clearing potential, particularly for Dark Phoenix, since actually Psylocke can have piercing from turn 1. It's extremely good. And also Gunboat Diplomacy if you have one of the heroes in Justice. Moving on, we've got Psylocke, who has tons and tons and tons and tons of money. She has a lot of threat removal. She's piercing from turn 1. She does have a small hand size, which I think is quite a problem when you're in hero form sometimes, but usually you can flip to Alter Ego. Once you get Cerebro, you can do some crazy things. Always have a good place to put your money. This is the kind of character I'll build in any aspect, and I will just know that I'll be able to cover threat removal for like 2 players, sometimes even 3 players, with basically not even trying to add anything else for it sometimes. There's a lot of archetypes she works well with. I think Hone Technique, Boot Camp, those kind of decks are really nice. Anything that uses the Psionic cards, you know, like Psychic Kick It in Leadership, a card I highly, highly recommend for her and for Phoenix. And because of her great starting stats, I absolutely love readying. I absolutely love Repurpose. Repurpose Psylocke is my absolute favorite Psylocke. Moving on to notable cards, there is no Scimitar. So if she wants her weapons to go to the katana form, they take a restricted slot. And that means if you want 2 katanas, you lose Scimitar, or you have to play Side Holster. I don't think this character with a lot of resources, particularly once this 0-cost card, particularly when she has a 4 hero hand size sometimes, she doesn't miss it when she doesn't have it. It's not like Scimitar is game-ending burst damage. It's nice to have, don't get me wrong. Because of her resource generators, I actually think Multi-Talented is really easy to use here. Grant Ward should always have a mentor to, you know, not betray you. You sort of stay one step ahead of him. She comes with Float Like a Butterfly. She's got so many Confusers. I haven't even mentioned her Confusers. That's like her biggest thing. She's the Confuse hero. But the beautiful thing is, if you have your weapons in a different configuration, your events don't even confuse the enemy. So, although, yeah, she's less good against steady and stalwart enemies, not by much. She's still very, very effective against them. She has a team-up card with Angel, which I think is quite good. I really think they're a great team, as I talked about when we talked about them with Angel. Shoutouts to Phoenix as well, who I talked about when we talked about Phoenix. And in general, I think she's very good at covering threat removal, so heroes that bring damage are very nice in combination with her. Quickly moving on to Quicksilver, his late game potential is so high, his readying can be really flexible, but he starts out so incredibly weak. And, you know, you might draw his stat boost in a different order, and you might have built his deck around a different stat than the ones you find first. Superpower training has helped him, But yeah, there's definitely, for a character called Quicksilver, he starts a little bit slow and unreliably, which is his big downside. The archetypes I like for him are ones that basically rely on, readying him, boosting his stats, things like that. There's even hybrid builds like Fluid Motion. You can actually put friction resistance toward playing the cheap attack events while readying up alongside it all. And yeah, I think it's pretty fun. Sidekick as well. Don't sleep on the Scarlet Witch ally, who, yes, she isn't necessarily amazing value and a bit unreliable in herself, but she's kind of an alter ego support in disguise because she gets you card draw when you go alter ego. So she's an alter ego kind of Avengers Mansion, and she's a good ally. So yeah, I'm actually a bit of a Scarlet Witch signature ally defender here. Card draw is obviously good as well, so he can actually find the upgrades he needs to be a properly functional hero. Moving on to cards he likes, we've got basically every stat increase under the sun here. A bunch of stuff that help him find cards and get set up quicker, and also some things that help him with combos, like you can use the Cyclops ally to make the villain take extra damage from every attack. Then you can pop a bunch of Adrenaline Rushes, which is a basic card which makes your attacks hit harder throughout the phase. And you can then do super boosted damage against the villain for a really easy combo takedown. Recommended pairings can be Scarlet Witch for the team up, which I actually quite like, and that just enables the alter ego card draw as well. Storm though, with that +1 attack from Thunderstorm, pretty unrivaled, I would say. Very, very good for any readying character. Moving on, we've got Rocket Raccoon, another tech kind of focused character, all about slaying minions, particularly wanting excess damage. He has a lot of money, he's got resource cards, and he gets card draw from slaying minions, which is nice. The problem is if there are no minions, he's not really, doing what he wants to be doing, so he's dependent on that. And depending on the shuffle of the encounter deck, a game with 2 or 3 more minions, if that one minion card was one place different to that treachery card, it can play out completely differently. He also starts off with 1 defense and 9 hit points, which is, he's just a little raccoon, guys. He's vulnerable. He also can't really do excess damage to get his card draw until he's found weapons, so he's a little bit draw dependent at the start of the game. But the kind of decks he likes, minion summoning, just minion defeating. He's also got really good basic fort. He can get up to 3, and he's got the I've Got a Plan event, which is really nice. So love basic fort builds. Even used Befuddle on him, and actually liked it. I'm not going to say it's the most powerful deck, but definitely fun and highly recommend it. And of course, one of my favorite decks in the game, it's got to be Rocket Repurposed. You guys have probably been waiting for this, knowing it was coming up. But you can even use your money and card draw to set up a bunch of ally stuff while you're shooting and doing rocket things around that. It all kind of works. So he actually has a lot of variety. Cards he likes, obviously some tech stuff. We talked about Repurpose, Spider Bite, now goes into every deck ever for me. It just kind of does, honestly. I love Superpowered Training and Lock and Load, trying to get him that particle cannon as soon as absolutely possible. And you'll see some of that minion summoning stuff I talked about here as well. Not to mention the Groot ally, not just enables a great team-up card, which I will actually say is quite often worth running in solo. I don't always do it, so I didn't quite put it here, but it is very, very good. But Groot just helps defend Rocket, which is his big weakness, so a really nice kind of ally to have to enable a team-up ability. For recommended pairings, you're going to see Groot here. We're also going to see Iron Man. I think that's kind of fun. Stark Tower can kind of help with the card draw, and Iron Man's really good at softening up minions with his sort of gauntlet blasts, so Rocket can get the excess damage. Moving on to Rogue, our trait-stealing, event-finding hero. Also has a lot of status cards. Really, really solid threat removal. I think one of the better threat removers in the game. I think she's underrated. She's also very tanky. I think that's underrated. Her defense card, Bulletproof Bell, unfortunately doesn't work if you put touch anywhere but the villain, and there's quite a lot of incentive to do that. And even if you put touch on the villain, you might end up stunning the villain or confusing them, and that will block potentially defending with Bulletproof Bell, which is all a way of saying, maybe don't stress too much about Bulletproof Bell. If you bend your entire gameplay and character to this one event, there's 2 copies of it, and it is very good, but she has so many other good things and possibilities that I would just say, if you're not enjoying her and you're playing around Bulletproof Bell, I think you might have found the problem. Something that's going to be notable for pairing her is that she can gain Aerial and Stalwart to boost her attack and footing events from putting touched on an aerial hero. Putting touched on a hero gets you Stalwart, and you also get their traits. If they have the aerial trait, double bonus. Now, I put the notable cards next as a bit of a twist because there are so many archetypes, and this is the printer-friendly version. So, yeah, I had just kind of fit better this way. But she does Death Focus and X-Gene, and you can take Extra, and you can take Caddy Carrier. So yes, she's got economy problems typically, but she has so many ways to fix them available in every aspect that you really shouldn't have problems after maybe turn 2 at the worst. But generally, it's fine. If you build for it, you can actually put extra copies of these cards into the deck to find them sooner, and it's better to have money sooner and have one extra card floating around than not have the money you need. Also, shoutouts to Beauty and the Thief. If you have a basic ally, you can use Touched and then Superpower Adaptation to get this over and over again because it's very, very good value. Generally, I really like her with events that combo because let's say I have Clear the Area in hand in solo play, but not Turn the Tide, I can use Superpower Adaptation to get Turn the Tide. Or I can use one way or another if I've got Turn the Tide and Clear the Area in hand to combo that all together. I love Even the Odds with her. It's just like, in my opinion, like the best forwarding card for multiplayer. And because she can reach into her discard pile, get it back, or get it out of somebody else's, it's just phenomenally good. I love Superpower Adaptation, and I think using that for big combos is my favorite way to play her that I highly recommend. Also, if you do want Bulletproof Barrel to be consistent, you might as well play Jocasta. A very, very good combo. I've got like a whole bit here that I wrote out. I did promise people a video on how to play like Rogue and a couple of other characters that are, maybe a little bit misunderstood or not as commonly liked or more complicated. And it's probably way, way, way too small for mobile viewers to see. A lot of this video probably has been. But long story short, it talks about Dauntless, which is a protection card which gets her Retaliate, which is very good because it lets her events do more. You can like put Touched on an ally and get Aerial, and you can have Retaliate, kind of like getting Stalwart and Aerial off a Aerial hero. However, it doesn't give a ton of extra value compared to just putting Touched on the villain. You have to stay healthy, you have to pay its cost to begin with, and it also conflicts with Bulletproof Bell if you're putting Touched elsewhere because you already have Retaliate. So yeah, I like Dauntless with Rogue, but I also build her without it sometimes in Protection. I think people who build for Dauntless and want to use Bulletproof Bell a lot get really grumpy about Rogue, but you can avoid all of this really, really easily. For suggested archetypes, we have a lot. She has Readying with her energy transfer card, but also like access to Utopia, and what Readying cards she can get in the aspects, she can potentially Superpower Adaptation to use again. So we have a lot of basic attack-oriented builds here, but she can get events out of her discard pile or out of other people's. So anything that's got like some fun combos with events, those archetypes are included as well. But she's also very tanky, so you can play allies, which she might then be able to use to like do Superpower Adaptation shenanigans, but she can play allies around her events quite often. It's not too difficult after 1, maybe 2 resource generators to afford any of her events and a 2 to 3 cost ally. It can totally happen, and she can totally do that pretty well. Because she does want a couple of resource generators out, and I actually think her events can be pretty good. Card draw is just good for her too. Sets up faster, gets some of her cards, just put Touched on an ally, and then suddenly, you've got swinging web kicks instead of heroic strike and so on and so forth in terms of your Southern Cross attack card. You know what? I'm actually not sure why I haven't put Sidekick on here, so I'm going to actually add that in live. We're going to do it, I guess I'm going to put it here. Sidekick is good for, if you use Suit Up, you can afford Gambit turn 1, and he's going to be more useful while being an absolutely fantastic target for Superpower Adaptation to get your own cards back. You can then, if you've got leadership allies, use Superpower Training to get side-by-side back repeatedly, which is very, very good. So I only have good things to say about that. Yet another archetype. There's so many for her that I wanted to cover here. I actually really like her with Web Warrior stuff as well, particularly in leadership or protection where there's more of them. She can put Touched on a Web Warrior to gain the Web Warrior trait herself, and that enables all kinds of shenanigans, notably with the Peter Parker basic ally, but there's some other stuff as well, which is really fun. So here we are, our recommended pairings, and she has a whole page of these guys as well. Shoutouts to Storm. Storm and Rogue is kind of just a known thing. Not only can Storm get Aerial, so you can get Stalwart and Aerial from her, but with the Hurricane weather, she can give out Retaliate as well. But also, with the Clear Skies is another way for Rogue to get Stalwart without having to put Touched on Storm. Storm is kind of like the ultimate provider for Rogue's events, which is really nice. I also really like Scarlet Witch. This was the last actually game I did with Rogue. We did Rogue and Scarlet Witch, and Rogue with Superpower Adaptation can keep getting Chaos Magic to play 3 or 4 cost cards for 0, well, for 1 card for Chaos Magic. Rogue can also grab Hexbolt and start casting spells. It is absolutely phenomenal and very, very good. And even getting the Mystic trait on demand is a really nice thing to have. We already talked about Rogue and Magneto, Rogue and Groot in this video. Rogue and Ironheart. Rogue can actually get like Ironheart's events that give progress counters to get Ironheart more progress counters. There's so many phenomenal combos here that there's even more than I could list here. Rogue is good with so many characters and severely underrated. Scarlet Witch is up next, and her strength is kind of like Hexbolt. Hexbolt is such a good card. She has 4 copies of it. people think you can only have 3 copies of a card. That is for deck building. Some heroes, namely Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, have 4 copies. I should have put that in my 100 facts video. Hexbolt can potentially offer multiple status cards for dirt cheap, but it can also kind of solve anything. It's a little bit unreliable, but she does have multiple ways to influence it, and there are multiple results, so she usually gets at least one of the things she's hoping for. The unreliability is basically the only kind of downside. She is an absolutely phenomenal, strong, borderline, if you like power, S tier character still, in my opinion. The stronger the card pool is, the stronger she gets, because Hexbolt can be card draw, Chaos Magic helps you pay expensive stuff, Summoning Spell and Leadership helps you get some of the best allies in. When we look at her archetypes, it's really a lot of card draw because her own cards are so good, and then otherwise kind of non-intrusive things that she can kind of play her powerful signature events around, or it's things which are quite efficient at cleaning up after her Hexbolt does random stuff. Maybe you did 2 damage to this enemy instead of 4, and you just need a little bit extra. Allies are really good at helping with that, things like that, or small events. Looking at her notable cards, it's basically all the Mystic stuff here. We've got even Hope Summers and Death Focus just for Hexbolt. It's totally worth it in my opinion. There's also some Avenger stuff, like the new Avenge Me card, just to find even more Hexbolts. Just a lot of card draw maybe. And I actually think she does very well with allies. If she ever has too many toughs, which is a quote-unquote problem, which can happen, she can use them to prevent consequential damage. Magic Shield can also be used for that. I haven't even talked about Magic Shield. Do you know who I like Scarlet Witch with as a recommended pairing? Deadpool, because Magic Shield can prevent him randomly being defeated, letting Deadpool go crazy. And the thing is, Deadpool puts acceleration tokens on the main scheme and benefits from them. Well, Scarlet Witch, by discarding so much from the encounter deck, this is actually a downside for her as well, but, I think the benefits outweigh the negatives. Since Scarlet Witch will shred the encounter deck, she'll make even more acceleration tokens appear, which makes Deadpool very, very happy. And eventually, Deadpool can use exhausting personality on Scarlet Witch, pull off one of his own big combos, and then Scarlet Witch can play a million really powerful spells and just win the game. Quick shoutouts to Quicksilver for the team-up card, and they also enable each other's alter ego ability. Oh, and shoutouts to giving toughs to Colossus, Groot, and Drax as well. And next up, we have Shadowcat, our form-changing defense hero. When she defends and she's phased, she takes no damage. There are 0-cost cards, her own Quick Shift, as well as a couple of protection cards, which do this for 0 cost. That is crazy good. However, I think there's only a small reason she's considered quite powerful. She also has really good cards and a resource generator out on the board from turn 1 in her solid form. The weaknesses are that she has to attack to change form. It kind of forces you to play a certain way. And even more than that, the biggest weakness is I think her Obligation and Nemesis set being far above average. Her Obligation, in fact, can completely shut her down. The more you lean into what she wants to do, the more it punishes you. So I find that pretty rough. If you're against a difficult villain and suddenly basically it prevents you from attacking and defending everything she wants to do, it's just bad news. There's nothing you can do. When it comes to archetypes, I think things with direct, simple attack cards are really good for her. I actually like Fluid Motion for her as well. And defensive builds can be really fun on her, obviously, too. Shoutouts to actually running X-Men builds on her, ally builds. I think where she's so defensive, she's a really great platform for allies. She just needs to ready up. But guess what? Utopia does that, so then she can attack and get back to phased, no problem. The only thing is you might miss out on the resource generation from Solid sometimes, which is the only downside. But quite often you'll hit that anyway, and it works really well. And the best thing about ally-oriented builds for Shadowcat is if your Obligation comes up, your allies can do stuff for you, and you can spend your resources on allies rather than not be able to do anything. I also really like her in Pool because when she's phased, she can thwart through crisis icons, which is really nice. But actually, when she defends, she just doesn't take damage, so she can kind of ignore amplify icons as well. Some of the cards I really like for her, Ready to Rumble, she actually comes with this, I believe, so she can kind of ready up and get to the right form for the villain phase. Cuts Both Ways and Defiance are the 0-cost protection events that make you count as defending, which is really, really good. And of course, we've got the form-changing cards like Lay Down the Law, Surprise Attack, and Perseverance, which I actually really like, particularly in 2-4 player. For recommended pairings, Colossus has a team-up card with her, but they don't maybe have as much threat removal as you would want at 2-player there. So actually, we're going to see Storm here yet again as the kind of hero I talk about in partnership. The +1 attack from Thunderstorm is great for Shadowcat. She's got readies and that, but she also defends and doesn't take damage, so there's no real downside for her if the Thunderstorm is boosting the villain's attack. Her Nemesis has a really annoying, really sticky, Confuse, which is really quite aggravating. Storm can just make you stalwart. It's so nice. And just removing stuns from Shadowcat can make sure she can get back to phased form more easily as well, which is really, really nice. Moving on, we've got She-Hulk. She-Hulk's biggest strength these days is that if she attacks the right enemy, specifically one that is stalwart and cannot be stunned, one that is already stunned, or is a minion that is defeated by the attack, her superhuman strength upgrade is not discarded because there is no valid target for it to stun, so it sticks around. You can build up to 7 attack with these alone, and just readying to deal 7 damage each time is super, super efficient. The problem is her threat removal is really low. She's got a couple of hero cards which aren't so good, and in hero form, her hand size is pretty small, which does drive her to go Alter Ego, but that low threat removal, a bit like, for Colossus and Groot, it's a little bit of a challenge. The archetypes I like for her, there's actually quite a few she can do quite well and get quite good results, but the readying ones are my favorite, like leading blow, high attack readying for protection, just basic attack, and you can take the quick strike attack event as well, and aggression. But if you go for solo, particularly like Justice and Leadership are really consistent. They offer a lot of threat removal, which I really like. Moving on to her notable cards, we've got Limitless Stamina again for this. She's actually a 15, not 14 hit point character, second highest in the game. And then there's just a ton of readying stuff that boosts her attack, or stuff that lets her go Alter Ego. Oh, Ready for a Fight is an absolutely phenomenal card for her, and it's so good you can build the entire deck around trying to use this, and it's just really, 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 really good. Recommended pairings, basically people that can stun the enemy. We've got characters here for that like Miles Morales Spider-Man, Jubilee, Doctor Strange, but the alternative to this, oh look, it's Storm again. Storm can make all characters stalwart, which is one of those conditions for us not losing our superhuman strength when we attack. It also removes stuns from us, which is kind of desirable, but we could also alternatively get +1 attack from Thunderstorm if we have managed to stun the villain. So whichever way you shake it, Storm is really helping power up She-Hulk in any way you could want. Oh, also, if She-Hulk gets the Knife Fight Treachery card, which is part of Storm's Nemesis set, come up as her encounter card, she will absolutely clobber the villain, which is really funny. Next up, we have Silk, who is a card-capturing hero, I'm going to call them. They defeat minions, they defeat side schemes, or they resolve treachery cards. And if you're in hero form, when you're doing all this, obviously, you get to tuck the card underneath your character, and then you get to spend them for various benefits. She can spend them for card draw and Alter Ego, which makes her pretty rich. She also has very high survivability, she has free defense. The problem is, some of her events want her to have the right type of encounter card under her, and the right enemy in front of her. So you need to not only have the right card tucked under you, the right kind of enemy or something in front of you, but draw the right event at the time you would want to use it. And have that be what you actually need to do in that situation. In other words, I could have a minion in front of me, my attack event, and the right card tucked under me to hit that minion, but maybe the threat is about to go over and I need to spend resources on that instead. There's so many things that need to come together to get it to line up, and Silk is a bit of a slow start character with a lot of slow tempo cards in her deck, a lot of upgrades and things, that she definitely has some downsides, but hey, she's a web warrior, she's got a lot of money, and she's pretty tanky, which is a very good thing to have, and she can do really, really well. For suggested archetypes, there's a couple of readying ones. There's some interesting things you can do with her. I like things that draw you cards, because then you have more of a chance to have the right event to line up with everything else that's going on. And minion summoning can provide her with not only more sort of targets for her events, but more cards to tuck to power everything else as well. We'll see the minion summoning under the aggression cards here. We'll also see, squared off in leadership, as well as Hugin and Munin, the readying ravens. I actually quite like her in pool. There's just a lot of good stuff for her though in basic, so whatever you play her in, you can have a very basic dominant deck and do well with her as well. There's the genius stuff, web warrior stuff, everything like that. For recommended pairings, I really like Falcon. His ability to manipulate encounter cards can help line things up for Silk. I think Rogue as well, a bit like we talked about Magneto, getting his situational events at the right time. Rogue can do that as well for Silk, and discard tucked cards underneath Silk to get the full benefit for the event, which I think is really fun. Oh, Silk actually has a team up with Spider-Man Peter Parker, but they both have to be Alter Ego to use this, so it's a little bit awkward. Also because the Spider-Man Peter Parker basic ally is unbelievably good for Silk, so yeah, a little bit awkward there. Next up, we have SPDR, also known as Special Doctor, actually called Spider, sometimes just called Penny Parker, as in Marvel Rivals. Now, Spider is a resource-generating build hero, very unique, hero hand size of 3, but she has a lot of resource generation, extra card draw from Alter Ego stuff, and she can put together some crazy shenanigans. She has a lot of money once she gets her upgrades in play, which is her priority. She's extremely tanky, and you can, let's say, basic attack with her, then go Alter Ego, and because she has 2 kind of identity cards in a way. They kind of swap, it's a whole thing. But basically, you can then recover after basic attacking without having to ready. But she's good at readying anyway. But yeah, you can just recover really easily with her, which is just an extra way to make her even tankier. People don't think of her as like a flipping character going alter ego a lot, but actually she does like that, and I should probably put that on her notes here. For suggested archetypes, I really like, she's got a lot of readying up, so anything that increases her basic attack, anything involving web warriors is good, anything with card draw to help her set up faster is pretty good as well. Also, especially like her in pool, she can definitely afford the laser swords and goes crazy with them, and stick-to-itiveness is really good for her, and she'll always have the resource ready for that. So we'll see that under the pool cards here, stick-to-itiveness right at the top. There's a lot of readying cards here, a lot of web warrior cards here, a lot of stat boost cards here, and even some stuff to help her go ultra ego here. And card draw, and just, there's things that she wants, and there's a lot of it available, which means Spider was actually quite strong when she was released, but now she is, I think she's gone up a notch. She's really, really good, and there's a lot of possibilities. Recommended pairings, we're going to see, of course, Captain Marvel here again for that card draw. If you can set up that a little bit more on turn 1 with Spider, you're going to have a really good game. Cable's here for that same reason as well. And because of Spider's weaker early game where she wants to set up, Spider-Man Miles Morales has a very strong early game, so I really like them as a pairing here too. Next up we have Spectrum, our event-heavy stat-changing hero. Spectrum can have 3 in her forwarding stat, or 3 in her attack stat, or 3 in her defense stat. This drives a lot of people to try and build decks for her that are all about these big basic stats, but I actually think this is a trap. While yes, you can do it, I highly recommend thinking of those big stats as a little bonus, and actually seeing her as quite an event-oriented character, or even quite a rich money character. This is because to have the right stat, you have to play the right event. You cannot change to the form with the right stat willingly, you have to play something to do so. Often this is possible, often it is not possible, and you might be stuck with 3 defense, but 1 forwarding when there's a lot of threat to remove. If you're in that situation and you've put in a ton of readying cards, but you can ready up with 1 forwarding stat, like, okay. She comes with 12 events out of her 15 signature cards for a reason. She has 2 resource generators and a signature ally, and everything else are her events. If you are dependent on her basic stats, you are then maybe not playing her events so much, and that's basically her entire signature kit. In multiplayer, it's a lot more forgiving because no matter what form you go to, there'll be something to do. But in solo play, starting the phase of like 1 attack, 1 fort, and a bunch of readying cards is... You made the mistake at deck building, in my opinion, in all honesty. I know this is maybe not a popular opinion, but there are definitely ways to avoid, being stuck in the wrong form for what you want. And it starts with building decks that don't really care about being in what form they are in. If you're in your defense form, exhaust to defend, and then don't bother with readying cards. The other way to do it, of course, you can go alter ego, and when you flip back down, you get to choose what form you go into. So if you keep going alter ego frequently, half the time you'll have perfect form control, which is really good. And you can also play your signature ally, possibly recurring him, to change form at will as well. Looking at the archetypes, there's a lot of event stuff here, aerial events, hone technique, the regular kind of justice ones we'd expect, like turbo draw, aerial stuff there, aerial stuff in protection. I do like Ever Vigilant quite a lot for her, but it is a little tricky in solo play, but it can still get a lot of value, but maybe don't put all your eggs into one basket. Potentially having 3 defense and being able to heal, and having 3 copies of her defense card, if you decide to lean into allies and have allies do things for you, while you're kind of hopping to whatever form your card draw will allow, that can be really good. Allies are flexible enough to cover for whatever form you're in, so this can do especially well. Looking at cards for her, you're going to see Deft Focus, which will help pay for all her superpowers, but Hope Summers to let her grab superpower events of her own, which let her change to any form she wants, which is really, really good, and she can often afford to do so. You're going to see aerial cards here, you're going to see form-changing cards here, and you're going to see cards that let you go alter ego more easily. I really like Captain Marvel here. I mean, just kind of thematically it works. It kind of got a little boost. It feels like they should have a team up or something, right, guys? Maybe I don't read enough comics. Maybe that's just the MCU. I haven't got to my Captain Marvel books yet. But nonetheless, the alter ego card draw can help you find an extra card that might let you change form. Beyond that, a lot of these picks are really flexible characters that can kind of adapt to you no matter what form you're in, with minimum or no downside. Next up, we have Spider-Ham. He's the tanky counter-mechanic hero is what I'm calling him. He's very hard to defeat, although he does invite extra attacks against himself. When he takes damage, he gains counters. He can spend these counters, and that makes him arguably the richest hero in Marvel Champions, so he can afford a lot. So he's tanky, he can afford everything, he also is maybe the best threat remover, or he's right up there in Marvel Champions as well, which is very, very good. His big downside is low damage. His attack event kind of wants to confuse, and it's going to waste that if you hit a minion. It's also quite a lot of damage, so it can waste damage and waste the confuse on some minions. He has a good hammer upgrade, but that will kind of compete with him basic forwarding sometimes, and it's not kind of a solution to everything, and it's just, one card in his entire deck. For Spider-Ham, he really loves Web Warrior decks, but he can do some different things with his cartoon sort of resources, when he takes damage. They are wild resources, so Hone Technique is on the table for him as well. He can do some crazy recursion shenanigans. He can do actually some interesting readying stuff. He actually has a lot of kind of little options which you might not expect. And thanks to the cartoon trait, Strength and Diversity is actually kind of interesting for him too. It's a trait that you're not going to find elsewhere, won't compete with what allies he finds from the aspects to boost up Strength and Diversity. Not every card is made equal for Spider-Ham. Clarity of Purpose generates effectively 2 resources as a 1-cost card itself initially. It just gives you them basically every turn. There's also Spider Tingle in Protection and the Rogue ally. These things which deal a little damage to you, getting you money, as well as their already good benefits on their own. Because basically all his cards have the cartoon trait, as does he. Team Building Exercise is really good. There's a ton of good Web Warrior stuff for him, as well as a few cards here to let him safely go Ultra Ego, because he gets a lot of benefit, because his recovery stat and his Ultra Ego support are also very good cards. Recommended pairings for him, you're going to see Storm here again. Giving the villain -1 attack makes it really efficient for him to get, hit but not take too much damage. He only needs to take 1 point of damage to get equal value as if he had taken 5. He just wants to take damage and he gets a resource. She can also use her Hurricane Weather to give more enemies retaliate, to make Spider-Ham hit them on purpose and get even more counters. I'm sorry to keep talking about Storm, but the things she can do is just genuinely the pairing I would recommend the most, with the most interesting and fun synergy. Shoutouts to Cyclops and X-23 though, that can also reduce the enemy's attack stat. Next up is Spider-Man Miles Morales. He has very cheap status cards. His events just kind of accidentally seem to throw status cards out there while already being very good in themselves. That means he's very tanky, except when the enemy is stalwart or possibly steady, because he only has 9 hit points. The fun thing about steady enemies is they can keep 1 stun and 1 confused status card on them for quite a long time potentially, which actually powers up his Arachnobatics attack, which doesn't actually care if the enemy is fully stunned or confused like most cards which benefit from stuns. It just wants a single status card to be on there, so it's really good against steady enemies. Builds for him I feel are slightly limited. His hero events are so powerful that you kind of have to go out of your way not to use them, but Web Warrior cards are really nice for that. Card draw to find more of his own stuff is really nice. And I also particularly like Fluid Motion for him. He has a lot of attacks, they're fairly cheap. You can ready with the Peter Parker basic ally and Double Life, which I think is a fun combination. Looking at cards for him, you're going to see a lot of Web Warrior stuff. Because he's a champion, he can actually play Moon Girl in hero form, which is really nice. Face the Past, because his signature ally isn't that bad, is also kind of a fun option too, more readying for him there. And because of his web shooters, like Spider-Man and Peter Parker, we're going to see Spider Bite here as well. For recommended pairings, I've already talked about him with Penny Parker, Spider here. There's a few decent ones. I quite like him for Ironheart. A lot of early game coverage so Ironheart can set up, get her progress counters, and start to dominate the game. Rogue is also quite nice. She has even more status cards to set up Arachnobatics, but she can use Superpower Adaptation to benefit from your extremely well-costed events. We already talked about Spider-Man Peter Parker at the start of the video, so I'm just going to scroll on through, and we're going to get to, I believe, Spider-Woman. She is a multi-aspect all-rounder hero, one of the best all-rounders in the game, but also extremely tanky. I think that's underrated. She is so tanky. She has decent health and an Ultra Ego healing support, but really, she can heal herself and get a tough card, as well as stun the villain. Those cards, which is Pheromones and Containment Immunity, are really, really good. Now, because she's a multi-aspect character, probably the most multi-aspect character we have, she can pick 2 aspects instead of 1, just has to have an equal amount of cards from both. The amount of archetypes she can take are phenomenal. I didn't bother separating these into player count, and the thing is, she's so flexible. She has stats that kind of grow, and she can basically fort a lot most turns, or attack a lot most turns, and she's super tanky. All of these work at most player counts in all honesty, which is a nice bonus. And there isn't really much she can't do. Now, I didn't put Hone Technique on here because she has to split her deck halfway between 2 aspects. It is definitely possible to take enough attack events to justify it, but it's a little bit of a stretch. But, anything else event-based, anything ally-based even, she can have Boot Camp, power up leadership allies, Almighty Avengers, power progression allies, or use healing from protection like Med Team to heal, just as allies, but probably leadership or aggression. I've in fact spent probably more time on Spider-Woman for this video, for this document, than anyone else. And this is for one reason. I have put together what is not an exhaustive list, there's probably even more combos, but it's the biggest list I've ever seen of multi-aspect combos that Spider-Woman can do. Got aggression and protection, aggression and justice, aggression and leadership. Then we've got like justice and leadership, justice and protection, leadership and protection. Every combo possible is on this page here. It's too much to go into now. We have stuff like I kind of mentioned already, like Mighty Avengers and Med Team. We've also got something like Squared Off, which is minion summoning from leadership for Patriot, who gets a tough card after a minion enters play. So we can have Patriot down, then use minion summoning from another aspect to get some benefits. We can use the aggression side scheme lock and load to get the justice weapon, sonic rifle, all within one deck. We can take the Domino ally from leadership to put a physical resource on top of our deck to make Hulk even more consistent, because Spider-Woman can actually look at the top card of her deck potentially to see if Hulk is safe to use, but this is even better. You can put Enraged on allies, then use Teamwork on the ally, which exhausts them but adds their attack stat to yours to kind of like benefit from the big attack bonus here without them taking extra consequential damage. There are a ton of combos here, and you can build whole decks around these. I think this is more useful than just archetype suggestions. There's so much going on here. Have a scan through it, and I think you'll be amazed. And if you think like Spider-Woman's boring, you'll find something really interesting here. I almost guarantee it that she can do it really well. Some of these probably have decks to Marvel CDB, but I'm pretty sure a lot of them don't. At least there's a lot of them here that I've never even heard of. So yeah, I looked through every card for every character to make this whole document, in addition to like generally having a lot of game knowledge. Spider-Woman, I went through everything, how every card interacts pretty much. Yeah, I probably missed some, but there's so much you can do here. So yay, Spider-Woman. There's some notable cards for her still. She has a lot of superpowers for Death Focus. Looking at the top card of a deck means Cosmo never misses. Tons of synergy with Pool, actually. You know, you can use the Pool cards for half the deck, then another aspect. That's really effective. Cheap events and cheap cards are generally what you're going to see a lot of here, because the more cards she plays from different aspects, the bigger her stats get, which is very, very nice. In terms of recommended pairings, I really struggled. Like, I don't even know which one of these to talk about, because Spider-Woman is such an all-rounder who can kind of do a bit of everything that I don't think there's like one dynamite combo with her. She can combo with almost anyone, as long as you maybe like talk about your decks beforehand, figure stuff out. Since she's very tanky, she can like stun the enemy, and she's good at removing threat. We can have like characters like Hawkeye here, even like Groot. Now, because Spider-Woman is so reliable and can kind of do different things, I think Spectrum is kind of more free to change her form without worrying about something not being covered. So that kind of works. Adam Warlock, they can both do multi-aspect shenanigans, and you know, his stat boost and healing stuff from Battle Mage actually works really well for Spider-Woman too. But yeah, she's kind of just good with everyone, in my opinion, except maybe characters that don't like stuns being on the board, like Spider-Man Peter Parker. Next up, we have Star-Lord. Now, he has some of the best economy in Marvel Champions. He can get basically an extra 3 resources every turn, you know, a -3 resource discount with his hero ability. The reason I don't think he's often considered this way is because his money comes with a price, which is a funny sentence. But he gets an encounter card for his troubles here. But nonetheless, he still gets a lot of money to play a lot of cards and set things up potentially quite quickly. On the flip side, he's a very risky playstyle, and he also happens to be one of the lowest survivability characters in the game on top of this risky playstyle. A lot of the archetypes I like for him involve allies and, you know, running different upgrades for different allies and things like that, because he can make them all Guardian. So in aggression, you can put Energy Spear on any basic or aggression ally, which I really like, but you can also do kind of attack focus combos for him. You can actually like do global logistics decks for him with like encounter control, looking at the encounter deck before you take your extra encounter cards, lining up the weakest ones, avoiding the worst ones, which I think is really fun. He actually has quite a bit of tech, and he can afford it, so Repurpose can go well. He can do like big game-ending combos with Repurpose on top of Daring Escape, and, you know, maybe a couple of sliding shots for good measure. Moving on to notable cards, we're going to see a lot of cards that are to do with allies, a lot of allies here. Also a lot of high-tempo problem solvers, like X-23 in leadership. If he gets a bunch of encounter cards that bring in like a couple of minions, she can like attack one, ready herself, then attack the other one, which I think is fun. And since she can ready, Blaze of Glory goes really well with her as well. Blaze of Glory being like his extra signature card effectively when he's in leadership. There's also quite a lot of defensive stuff here. I highly recommend Mockingbird because she can stun the enemy and then she can defend later. You know, 2 defenses, particularly good because, you know, he might get attacked multiple times with extra encounter cards. You shouldn't be taking too many. You should only be using Daring Escape as like a combo tool, in my opinion, not like an immediate problem solver. There's no point using it to deal with an encounter card by giving yourself an encounter card. We've got allies like Thor Odinson, who've, a tough card that can also potentially attack multiple minions, which he's more likely to have than a lot of people. These can really help him survive a lot for very little extra deck space. We talked about Falcon pairing with Star-Lord, being able to let him see the encounter cards before Star-Lord takes them, but also Aerial Recon can deal Star-Lord an encounter card for immediate extra sort of combo value from his cards which benefit from encounter cards. Next up we have Storm, the global effects weather hero. She could have, say, Thunderstorm in play, which powers up her attack, her allies' attack, your buddy's attack, his allies' their attack, and the villain's attack and all the minions' attack. Her weakness might be that whatever was most profitable, most value for her to use in the hero phase might come back to bite her in the villain phase because of what affects the heroes affects the villains and vice versa. But she does have ways to change the weather. If you boost the villain's attack, you could chump block, you could use a status card, you could just go alter ego. And the benefits for the players by far outweigh the negatives. If you have watched this whole video, you will have heard me talk about Storm a lot and how she can kind of combo with other characters. There's so much she can do, and it's very powerful. To talk about suggested archetypes for her, I really like ally stuff to capitalize on the Thunderstorm +1 attack bonus, because the more allies you have out, the more you're benefiting from the +1 attack every turn. You can combine it with Boot Camp, which is really fun. And because the Thunderstorm damage bonus is affecting herself, readying is really good, stuff like Repurpose, sorry to mention it again. Some of her events are a little bit costly. You do have some resource generator options like X-Gene, Death Focus, but just taking some cheap events can really help smooth things out as well. So you see a few of those in the archetypes and a few of those recommended down below, along with allies like Two Gun Kid, who hits 2 different targets, so Thunderstorm's damage bonus is kind of doubled for him, which gets absolutely absurd with Boot Camp. Also, shoutouts to one of my favorite cards for Storm is the Multiple Man. If you play Multiple Man turn 1, you can deal 6 damage, and then you have your next 3 attacks ready to be blocked just for Multiple Man there. It's so efficient. Maybe I don't set up a perfect upgrade on turn 1, but I have so much breathing room. It's absolutely insane, and you don't even have to make all those attacks immediately. I could maybe attack with the first Multiple Man, block with him, and then I have 4 damage on the board for next turn. It's just really, really good. For recommended pairings, we're going to have Phoenix here for the very, very good team-up card. Bring a cell phone to make absolutely exceptional use out of it. Rogue here that we've already talked about with her. Jubilee that we've also already talked about for her as well. Don't remember if we talked about Drax, but her boosting his basic attack and the potential Blizzard reducing the villain's attack can be so good for Drax as well here. There are probably more characters I could have put for Storm, but they're in the rest of the document, so I have no doubt that you will find them just by looking at a handful of other characters. There'll be several mentions of Storm there. I could even have put Cable here, just to help her get her cape quicker, or any kind of resource generator, even just get X-Jet sooner is really good for her. Next, we've got Thor, the original minion summoning hero. He's got high-ish damage with his, he can get his attack up to 3 with his hammer, but the problem is, if he plays his hammer on the first turn where he gets it, well, he only has a 5 alter ego hand size, and if he plays the hammer, he's got an attack stat of 3, sure, but a lot of characters can get that. He's only got 4 cards left then to set up with or do something with, and it's a very, 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 very painful turn 1 in most cases. However, with his card draw, he can have a really strong economy. He's got 2 good resource generators as well, and he can increase his hand size to the proper size because he has a baseline hand size of 4 in hero form as well. But if you get minions as your encounter card, it's tons of card draw. If you do some minion summoning, it's tons of card draw, and that is probably his biggest strength, more than his damage. I don't think his damage is actually super high by modern standards, but if you look through all of the characters in the game, he's got damage, but Hammer Throws feels a little bit expensive. For archetypes, it's basically anything and everything to do with weapons, to do with basic attacking, to do with minion summoning. He's also got some good ally builds or threat removal builds that don't synergize too well with him, but definitely cover his weakness. But now the infiltration event and squared off, it's easy to combine these archetypes with those kind of decks and builds and get the best of both benefits. Notable cards for Thor include a lot of readying stuff. We've got Limitless Stamina and Death Focus, obviously. For multiplayer, Get Over here to engage other people's minions and get that card draw. Target Spotter is really good for that too in the villain phase. Having at least one Target Spotter is now my go-to in multiplayer 4. I think it's always worth it. Since we're summoning a lot of minions, there's a lot of stuff to do with minions here, like the Clint Barton ally for one example. X-23 can potentially defeat multiple minions in the same phase, which is good. But basically, yeah, most of aggression works well with Thor, except maybe honed technique and ally stuff. And even then, I've got a few allies here that combo with basic attacking and summoning minions. Oh, and shoutouts to the Bifrost. This is kind of more for aggression, but it's in basic, so I put it here. It's really good. I find pairings with Thor a little bit weird. You've got characters like Winter Soldier and Rocket Raccoon that can defeat the minions he summons because he only really wants to summon them. If he defeats them, great, but he's not worried if somebody else does it. Magneto has cards which need minions in play too. I really like Captain America though, just to cover his weaknesses and kind of keep the game moving. I think that works really well, and it's really, really thematic. Oh, and Falcon. Aerial Recon, dealing him minions for card draw is so good. Next up is Tigra, who unfortunately has not quite reached the UK shores just yet, hopefully very soon. But I have a lot of stuff here for her. She has a lot of hooks in aggression, more than you might expect. She is very rich, loads of card draw, resource generation, discounts on her cards for having minions out, you name it. She's got money if you're playing her game plan. She does have lower threat removal, and it can be potentially a challenge, I think, to juggle too many minions, but she has the means to clear a few out, and she also brings them in stunned most of the time, which is very helpful. For archetypes, again, you're going to see a lot of aggression stuff, very much like Thor, a lot of minion summoning stuff elsewhere. Shoutouts to protection as well. As we look down to the cards she prefers, you're going to see stuff like Pin Down There, Come Get Me Bub, but also aggression kind of stole the show here. She works with so much aggression stuff, I had to kind of do the page format differently. Shuri has a good case to use a lot of this stuff, which means even if she prefers aggression, she has a lot of variety in it. But I also think protection is going to be very, very good. I don't think leadership will be bad at all, and I think justice will still be good as well. Moving on, we have recommended pairings. It's got to be Magneto at the top. Wrapping minions in metal that are engaged with Tigra is just too good. Maria Hill being able to stun minions while providing toughs and things, and potentially even healing Tigra out with the Iliad and removing threat, also too good. Black Widow's Widow Bite helping stun, keep minions around longer for Tigra, also extremely good. I think those are my three top picks. Maybe Falcon next with the aerial recon to deal the perfect minion. Even Cyclops can use Field Commander, which gets rid of temporary on his upgrades as well, to put practice defense on a minion permanently. Storm giving all enemies -1 attack from Blizzard is also really helpful here, and she can blank minions too. These 6 pairings here, I think are absolute dynamite pairings, and I don't think the other pairings are bad whatsoever. I think there's some really other good ones here. Look at this page. Look how I did a whole page of really good team-ups with Tigra, and I stand by all of them. Getting on down the list, we're at Valkyrie, our minion-slaying raiding hero. Now, she can reach 4 attack very easily with Dragon Fang, but before she has Dragon Fang, she's almost half a hero in my opinion. She really needs to boost up her attack stat. She can do that with aggression cards and things as well. A big weakness, particularly for solo play, that Obligation and Nemesis set are absolute game enders. I don't know why they function like that, but it is what it is. And when Valkyrie isn't otherwise hindered, once Dragon Fang is ready, she can absolutely decimate the minions. I think 2025 Valkyrie is actually quite good and quite fun. Yes, okay, the Nemesis set, the Obligation thing, it is a big deal for solo play, but multiplayer she can really shine, and she's a lot more fun in solo than she used to be. She has more tools to navigate a lot of these things. Of course, like a lot of the characters around here, a lot of minion summoning, a lot of basic attack stuff as well, and it all shines with Valkyrie. Also some strength and diversity stuff, which I should have pointed out for Thor. He has Asgard, Avenger, and his hammer gives him aerial on turn 1. That's kind of nice. For Valkyrie, it kind of bypasses some of the restrictions on her Nemesis set, strength and diversity, and she does have Asgard and Avenger, and she can get aerial, so it's pretty nice for her too. Notable cards for Valkyrie is just lock and load. Get your Dragon Fang sword quicker. Superpower training can do it as well. Just run both of them. Hey, if you're in Justice, use Manifold to get superpower training if you can. Your character comes alive once she has her sword. Beyond that, it's a ton of minion summoning, things that benefit from that. We already talked about Patriot, who's come with Civil War. A lot of stuff that benefits basic attacking and minions. And if you're in solo, potentially a lot of threat removal. For recommended pairings, I like Falcon. Just more minions is exactly what she wants, and less things that will mess her up like her Obligation and Nemesis set. He's really good at protecting her from those. Venom is up next. He's another seriously good all-rounder. He uses weapons, but they don't really act like weapons. He can exhaust them to attack, to thwart, to defend. He is pretty rich. He has Spider Sense for card draw or his alter ego support, but his hero ability also draws him money. He starts with an extra card at the start of the game as well, finds a weapon, which is really helpful. His big downside is that a lot of his events have status cards attached, and steady and stall enemies really reduce their value. However, as an all-rounder, he works with a lot of stuff here. I don't know if he shines with any one thing here. I know people will say firepower, but it's hard for me to pick ones to talk about. I really like him for Guardians of the Galaxy, actually. He's tanky enough that he can play allies, and he's got the money to play them, upgrade them, that kind of thing. I think that's very good. And because of the unique rule, a lot of Guardians can't play all the Guardian allies, but he totally can play Gamora, Rocket, Groot, with no downside. For the cards I recommend, we do have a lot of those allies. I said, the Guardian basic ones, they're just always going to be good for him in most builds, unless you're doing something a little bit different. Because his hero ability generates a wild resource on demand, I actually think Grant Ward is good for him. He can always pay the mental to avoid 2 damage and losing the ally. Yeah, you'll take 1 damage just from your own hero ability, but you keep the ally and it's half the damage. I still think that's good. Recommended pairings was really tough for Venom. He's such an all-rounder. It was kind of like, everyone's just fine with him. But I had the Black Panthers there. I think they are really good at helping with his Nemesis set, which can be a big problem. Often he can deal with it. If he's got run and gun, he's fine. But it's certainly helpful to have a Panther in your corner. But he's kind of just good with anyone, as long as they don't mind stuns. Vision is up next, our form-changing versatile hero. What form are you in? His solar beam will do something different depending on what, form he is in, which means you can use it to thwart or attack. It's super flexible, and so is Vision. He can even bypass crisis icons to some degree. And based on his form, his signature ally, who is incredibly good, Vivian, can also do different things. Whatever the encounter deck throws at you, Vision can probably solve it. Vision is also quite tanky. Vision doesn't really have any significant weaknesses. Some of his cards are form restricted, which can be a little bit wonky. He begins the game with 1 card less than the average hero, so his turn 1 isn't amazing, but he can actually end up drawing a card on turn 1 anyway, which is kind of nice, so it's not a big deal. Vision, I think, might be one of the most underrated heroes in Marvel Champions. Now, because Vivian is so good, I really love the sidekick decks with him. Anything about allies too, because he's quite good defensively. If he's an intangible, he doesn't necessarily have to defend any attacks. Because his threat removal is so good, he can be a great platform for more aggressive things in solo play. But he can kind of just do anything in any play account with the proper deck building, and even without it, he's probably going to be pretty decent at it. Actually quite like readying for him in combination with Reboot. If you boost his stats up, it's actually more efficient to ready him than Vivian. And I think Energy Barrier combos quite well with his intangible form as well for the purposes of repurpose, and Taunt goes well. You can combine those. Taunt when you're taking less damage and intangible. It's just a lot of really good stuff for Vision. Oh, and that's before we even focus on some of his popular minion farming builds, which people like to do. Sit in intangible form, have a bunch of minions out, and watch them fail to hurt you because you're taking a -2 damage from all attacks. Some very famous builds there that use Bring It for mass card draw, and I sneakily suspect that inspired Tiger's design. We've got quite a few recommended cards for Vision here, a lot of form-changing stuff, some interesting sort of cards to help him go Ultra Ego, because he can then get Vivian back lots and do a lot of things with that. Of course, Reboot that we talked about, don't forget to take it with him. It's an Android-only card, of which he's the only one so far. Recommended pairings was kind of hard for Vision because he kind of just does everything very, very flexibly. Scarlet Witch is here because, her Hexbolt is a little bit random, so his flexibility can help solve what Hexbolt didn't. It's also just really thematic. I think I talked about Ant-Man and Vision at the start of this video. Most of the characters here really lack thwarting or consistency. War Machine is up next, and this guy has damage. That's about it. He's got weak thwarting, but wants to go Ultra Ego to get counters to deal his damage. He has not a lot of money, quite expensive cards. However, did I mention that he has damage? He is accurately named. He is a machine built for war, and that's about it. He needs funding from maybe elsewhere, and doesn't want to do anything but damage. Interestingly, for solo play, he's got enough damage. You just take him elsewhere, where his threat removal can be covered more effectively. In multiplayer, you can kind of lean into attacking, but a lot of the time, you just want to set up his own signature stuff to attack. Something I really like is Float Like a Butterfly. If the enemy is confused, it makes you deal 1 extra damage. Shoulder Cannon does 1 damage on repeat. Now it's dealing 2 damage on repeat, and it's absurd. It's still very good at 3 and 4 player, but I don't think he should be the one to bring it there whatsoever. If you're relying on him to be your Justice player to remove threat, it might be a little bit difficult, and I would rather somebody else played it on him, or you have 2 Justice characters. But that was too involved to explain, just written in this document here. I didn't want people to think, oh, yeah, he can be really good. I'll bring him in 3 and 4 player. I don't think in a conventional one of each aspect team, he's going to be your best choice for Justice, even with this combo. But speaking of this combo in a very similar way, the archetype includes confusing and using the card to get extra damage. But we're recommending the card down here in his notable cards. We're also recommending the Cyclops ally, which is another way to kind of double the damage of Shoulder Cannon. If your buddy brings the Cyclops ally and you bring Float Like a Butterfly, or vice versa, you can start to do 3 damage at a time from Shoulder Cannon. If Cyclops is recurred, it could be 4 damage at a time from Shoulder Cannon, and it's a little bit silly. Also, shout out to the new supports Gemma Simmons and Leo Fitz. Incredibly good to help War Machine setup. I really like them. Also, Manifold to get superpowered training to help him set up fast to get that Shoulder Cannon, or even your upgraded chassis. If you can get that turn 1, it's really high value. Oh, and I should definitely throw archetypes, but I'm taking this in any protection deck these days. Ready for a Fight is unbelievably good for War Machine. Not only does it stop him getting schemed against so much, but you can keep flipping Alter Ego more often, which means more and more ammo on average per turn, which means more and more damage, which is, if you're playing War Machine, that is why you're playing War Machine. Paired heroes, it might not surprise you to see Cyclops is here, and I think Psylocke as the premier confused character that came with Float Like a Butterfly is really good to maybe, bring with Float Like a Butterfly. Cyclops, his exploit weakness, is going to double Shoulder Cannon's damage. And of course, Iron Man is here with a team-up card, and War Machine having a bit of a setup time. Cable is really good too. Next up, we have Wasp. Wasp has dividable damage and threat removal in giant form and with some of her events, which means she doesn't really waste anything. On the flip side, her events are a little bit tame in value compared to most characters' hero events. They kind of resemble more aspect cards, I think, in terms of value, with some exceptions. She can deal quite a bit of damage, and I really like how that her helmet boosts her forwarding. She can get up to 3 forwarding without playing Heroic Intuition or anything, which is really handy to have as well. And one of her best strengths is when in Alter Ego, she can shuffle mental resource icon cards back into your deck. This means stuff like Nick Fury, Professor X, the double mental resource card Genius, all these kind of good cards. For some reason, most of the best cards in the game have the mental resource trait, so Wasp can kind of recur the best cards in the game. Maybe it's a little bit repetitive, but it can also be a lot of fun and very, very good. One of her downsides is a lot of her cards are very expensive for not a ton of output, but Pin Particles is at least pretty nice, a little bit of extra card draw or healing if that's what you need. For archetypes, she's actually super flexible and can do a lot. She can play events, she can use her basic stats, basic attack, fort, or defense, by the way. She can do ally stuff because she's a good foundation for them with a good defense and flexible output too. It kind of works around their flexible output. So in terms of what decks she plays, there's a ton of things she can do, which is really nice. In terms of notable cards, we've got things like Surprise Attack, Lay Down the Law, as well as different stat boosts and ways to ready, I think are quite nice. We've got a lot of powerful mental resource cards here as well, such as Maria Hill, such as Multiple Man. She can shuffle those back in. That can be a really fun thing to do to get even more multiple men played multiple times. And then for pairings, obviously we've got Ant-Man with the team-up card. I actually think they're a pretty good pairing. Beyond the team-up card though, it's really hard to pick a meaningful pairing for Wasp. She's kind of just, kind of good at whatever she wants to be good at, with no big hooks going beyond her hero, like interacting with other heroes. Up next is my unready speculative look at Wonder Man. If you watch my deep dive, you'll recognize almost all of this. I think he has tons of damage, high survivability, pretty good threat removal, and a ton of money. What are his weaknesses? Well, he wants to play multiple energy resource events per turn, which might not be kind of optimal in every situation, but if you don't do it, you're not getting all his benefits. So it's kind of like an opportunity cost kind of thing. And maybe building all those events into your deck limits your kind of deck building options. And, if you're all events, you're kind of dependent on what you draw. Everything's immediate impact. There's no kind of stability there, so to speak. But, man, he looks pretty strong. For archetypes, I really just think he's going to want cheap energy events no matter what else he's doing around it. You could just go all in on cheap energy events. And I'm tempted to say that's what he's going to want to do almost all the time. He can take those events from other aspects. As long as the event has an energy resource, it can go in his deck. The Brute Force build that I talked about of Nelson, I think, is going to be potentially very interesting, but I'm going to need to play it to see it. I do think just mass playing cheap energy events and, regularly basic attacking to clear out, his little storage of cards. He's got a whole mechanic there, but basically I think it's going to generate a lot of damage, a lot of healing, and a lot of extra value. Of course, he's aerial too, so there's aerial stuff. He's got it all. And I think he's going to be very potent. Because he's multi-aspect, I did his kind of thing here very differently. These are not just general cards I recommend for him. These are the energy resource events I recommend from other aspects. There's a lot of them here. A bunch that interact with minions. There's a few that can ready him, which is going to be quite desirable if you're mass playing energy events. There's some really good threat removal. You can play a big damage aggression deck and take 3 times even the odds to help, just like Gamora, which I think is so good. A bit like Spider-Woman, I've done some of the multi-aspect combos here. Kind of like... the left box will correspond a little bit with what's in the right box. So we can take all these minion-oriented events with the energy resource here and then combine them with minion cards from other aspects, like Come Get Me Bub, Change of Fortune, the Raft, Squared Off, things like that. We can summon things with a leadership card, and then we have all these other cards, despite playing a leadership deck, from aggression to help with or combo with it in some way. We can also use aggression cards to boost our basic attack, and then we can use cards from other aspects that benefit from increased basic attack. There's a bunch of other stuff here too. I'll let you guys read that if you check out the document. There's too much to go through, and I did a whole deep dive on it, but Wonder Man is going to have some really fun options, and we'll see how it all shakes out. In terms of other cards he likes, a lot of these would have energy resources anyway, because he wants to overpay for a lot of events with energy resources. We're going to have Death Focus for superpowers. We're going to have things like Wasp, which also want to be overpaid for. Here's a card which overpays for cards, so Ant-Man in leadership is also an option, really good for that. Also, the new Firebird ally is going to be good for that kind of thing. And then we've got some pairings. I'm sorry to say Storm is here again. Even the -1 villain attack is good, as well as the +1 Thunderstorm, because he has a card which does damage based on your current basic attack, and she can boost it, and she just seems quite good with him. Cable as well to help him set up. He's got some really nice cards that can really benefit him early on, but we'll have to see how these play out. I kind of feel like Wonder Man is going to go well with everyone, except people who want to stun the villain. Moving on, we are almost there. We're at Winter Soldier. He's a minion-slaying attack hero. Interestingly, he looked like a kind of event attack hero when he was first revealed, but he also kind of wants the basic attack because of his rifle and things, which is interesting. And a lot of his attack events kind of want to hit the villain if you want to get the stun. Sometimes the overkill attack will deal more damage to the villain than the minion. I think he can actually be a rush hero, but definitely with deck building, you can absolutely clear a ton of minions in one turn, and his hero ability to get threat removal from doing so is uncapped. This is not a drill. If you defeat 6 minions, you remove 12 threat. It doesn't stop, so that's kind of nice. Aside from some of his signature events kind of wanting to kind of affect the villain more than minions sometimes, if he doesn't have minions, he doesn't really have any more threat removal than just his 2 basic thwart, which he might want to use for his, I don't know, rifle to get value if he's played that. So a little bit of, he's kind of a one-trick pony, and that trick is kind of going through minions to hit the villain, but he does that trick really, 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 really well. Unsurprisingly, a lot of his archetypes are all about attacking, basic attacking, or events, or combining them, that kind of thing. I also think card draw can be quite nice. Make sure you do find an attack event, because he definitely wants to spend his armor once per turn, because it offers a lot of value. Notable cards, we're going to see basically the entire aggression aspect. He wants the basic attack, he wants to play attack events, and he likes hitting minions. The only thing here that he might not have is anything ally-oriented, but there are a bunch of allies that interact with minions, or shield characters like the new Captain America ally, but then we've got classics like Angela and Frog for minion interaction. I think he's good in protection, I think he's good in leadership, I think he's fine in justice and stuff. Aggression Winter Soldier just has more toys than everybody else. Recommended pairings will be for Captain America, for that team-up card I talked about so many hours ago that I really like with them. Black Widow as well has a very, very good team-up card with him. And of course he released alongside Falcon, who can deal him minions for aerial recon, and that can introduce a lot of extra threat removal too, so they're a really good pairing. Falcon as well lacks kind of damage to put to the villain sometimes, and Winter Soldier can definitely provide that as well. Our penultimate hero here is Wolverine, our high-tempo attack event hero. He spends health with his claws to play attacks. It's a pretty good conversion ratio, and generally if you can play an ally with your cards in your hand, and then attack for your claws, and then do anything else with the rest of your cards, you're basically on a path to win with Wolverine, or just, play more attacks, why not? A lot of his archetypes are going to be attack-oriented, but I really like kind of Utopia builds for him too, because his signature ally boosts the damage his basic attack does, as does one of his upgrades. So readying can benefit him quite a lot. So almost like Winter Soldier, he can actually benefit quite a lot by basic attacking as well as playing events, even if he is particularly event-driven. I also really like Recurring Jubilee because her ability can stack in terms of boosting Wolverine's damage. It's a bit weird in the rules. I've got a deck on it on Marvel CDB. You can actually use Ready for a Fight to go Ultra Ego, get massive healing, then use this to flip back down and get your hero form healing. Because it's timing dependent, you have to be in hero form when your turn starts, and that's pretty fun too. Notable cards for Wolverine are going to be some of my favorite attack cards for him. Health boost, because that gives him more flexibility in, spending his health and then healing. Really like Triage is an ally who can heal him. All allies, both can be good. Use it as you need. And even though he kind of wants to, deal damage to himself to play these attack events, you can do that first. Then you can play someone like Polaris to give him a tough, so you can take the villain's attack and keep fighting, healing up for next turn to play even more attacks. In terms of recommended multiplayer pairings, we've got Colossus and Jubilee both with team-up cards, but I actually really like him with Phoenix, Don't Tell Cyclops. Phoenix's nemesis has a tough, Wolverine always has piercing. The Nemesis is huge. Wolverine has tons of damage. Phoenix has a lot of forwarding, which Wolverine doesn't always have. So I think they complement each other in a pretty fun way. Also, shoutouts to Maria Hill, who can use the Iliad to heal Wolverine to keep him attacking. I think that's fun as well. Last but not least, we finally get to X-23. Huge damage, really strong early game, can actually fought for a lot, actually pretty tanky as well. The downside is, if you take a lot of damage for her mechanics, it can have a risk, but really she can manage it pretty well. Her obligation is particularly annoying, but she's so strong baseline, it's not like the biggest deal, it's just kind of annoying. The kind of archetypes I like for her are really around basic attacking and readying. If you can benefit more from Honey Badger, do it. I'm bringing attack training, mission training, danger room training, or protective training respectively, whatever aspect I'm in, to boost her stats. If I'm in pool, I can't bring one of those, but I can bring X-Force Recruit, which I also might bring, which I'm talking about, I guess, the notable cards. You'll see all of those down here. But yeah, she can just do so much with her basic attacking, also basic forwarding, also signature ally. That lets her do more of all of that. It's very, very good. She typically runs cheap cards because her own cards are cheap and she wants to play them. So whatever else she's bringing from an aspect typically has to be cheap to play around her own cards. She does not want to spend like 3 of her own cards to play 1 more expensive aspect card because her signature cards are probably just better and what she wants to do. Again, we've got a lot of readying cards here. We've got a lot of attack-oriented cards. We've got things like Blood Rage here. Hand Cannon can be fun for her. What Doesn't Kill Me is an absolute staple for her in protection. It's so good. And of course, stat boost as well, like Wolverine, to make her more flexible in terms of taking damage and being able to heal it back up and just manage that as part of her, like the challenge of playing her. Lastly, we've got her recommended pairings, and I'm so sorry. It's Storm again. It's just too good on a readying character to get that +1 attack from Thunderstorm, especially with Honey Badger. It's just phenomenal. It's absolutely disgusting, to be honest with you. I think Cyclops, with his exploit weakness, can have a similar kind of benefit, but much less flexible. But again, we've got Adam Warlock here, as we talked about at the kind of beginning of this video. Battle Mage is so good to either heal Honey Badger or boost X-23 stats, so I really, really like those. This brings us to the end of the video. I've got my list of heroes by trait kind of at the end here. I'm not going to go through everything. I kind of showed you guys at the start. There's also down here a kind of guide / glossary to all the archetypes I kind of feature here almost. There's like over 100 written up, including certain details about how many of like hone technique and how many attack events I might bring for it. Little details about what heroes might like it, how to use these things. Some of them are pretty like simple, like 1 line. Maybe it's a variant of a different one. Some of them have like 7 lines of text. It's very thorough here, so you guys can enjoy that in your own time. The link to the document is down in the description below. There's the printable / PC friendly version, and then the mobile, which is also PC friendly, to be honest, version all down below. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for watching my videos for so long, potentially all 150 of them. This was the second part of my big November finale. We've got one more big video to go, and I think you guys are really gonna like it. If you enjoyed this, feel free to check out like my Patreon or my Ko-Fi, or just subscribe to check out the next things coming up on the channel. Don't forget to check out Into the AM, and I'll see you guys in the next video.